Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Godlike Kyuubi Naruto and Ruby. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by NeonZangetsu and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. The Fox and the Maiden. What do you know of evil? Insidious, isn't it? We all carry that tiny piece of darkness deep inside us. It's our choice to smother it, or give it fuel. No one simply turns overnight. It's far more subtle than that. A whisper here, a lie there, a bit of unkindness towards your friend. You tell yourself that you're in the right, that you aren't doing anything wrong. They deserve. You're taking what's rightfully yours. Dozens upon dozens of small acts that build and build and build over time, until you wake up one morning and discover you no longer recognize your own reflection. Now the face staring back at you in the mirror is that of a stranger, the kindness in your eyes a hollow shell hiding something hideous. Somewhere along the way you sold your soul for power, and before you know it you're alone, gone down a dark road to no return. Was that how it was for my friend, I wonder? Were we blind? Did we fail to notice it? What did we do wrong? All my life, I've tried to keep myself from going down the same path. I've fought tooth and nail against whatever I deemed to be wrong injustice wherever I found it, from petty acts of spite, to crimes of the vilest order, even overarching ambitions to consume the whole of creation as we know it. I've just about seen it all. My eyes have stared down powers that would make most men weep. My hands have grappled with ninja, demons, immortals, even the gods themselves, all the while holding true to what I believed was right. I said compassion was not a weakness, nor kindness a sin, and I can say, without a doubt, that I was an idiot. Was I afraid? Of course I was. In the beginning I wanted nothing more than to run. To turn my back on everyone and everything, to run as far as my legs would carry me, but I couldn't. I wouldn't. I learned to stand my ground, to fight. Because something deep inside me said this was wrong. Someone had to do something. Someone had to take a stand. I trusted my heart, and followed my emotions where they led me. Sentiment is the very foundation of our being after all, for without it, without that spark of humanity, what are we? Little more than mindless beasts tearing one another apart. Emotions define us, you see. They strengthen us. Weaken us. Drive us forward. Hold us back. Emotions can burn. Heal. Hurt. Some master their emotions, steel themselves and fight for what they believe is right. A misguided few fill their hearts with malice and their lust for power, and everything around them goes up in flames. Hope becomes hate. Joy twists itself into wrath. And love turns to bitter envy. And yet still they seek more. Always more. It's never enough for them. They always need more. What's that old saying again? Everybody wants to rule the world. No matter the time, no matter the place, there will never be a shortage of short-sighted sycophants who seek to use others for their own gain, those who crave power solely for power's sake. I should know. I fought more than my fair share. Orochimaru, Madara, Kagaya. Traitors, puppeteers, monsters all, they were fiends. But the worst among them would be me, because I believed, because I was a naive boy, because I thought good would triumph. After all he'd said, all he'd done, all he swore he would continue to do, I still tried to save my friend. To bring Sasuke back from the darkness. I thought I could. I should have killed him. But I didn't. That's who I was. We are who we choose to be, not who people think we are. I chose to help Sasuke at the time, even if he didn't want to help himself. In the end, when Kagaya was all but sealed and the battle was done, I offered him my hand. I chased him back to the Valley of the End, still thinking of him as my friend, still hoping, believing, that I could save him from himself. And how did the great Sasuke Uchiha repay my kindness? He ran me through with his sword. There's nothing quite like the cold feel of steel in your gut to shatter your beliefs. Your world. You spend so long living your life by a single guiding light, and when someone snuffs it out, well, I never saw it coming. My eyes were too blind to see the truth in front of me until it was too late. Until that moment I thought it would all turn out somehow, even if he killed me. Even if I died fighting him. I was wrong. The moment I realized he actually meant to kill me, to keep killing everyone afterwards. At first all I could do was wonder. Why? Where had I gone wrong? How had I failed to reach him? Perhaps he was already lost by the time I found him, utterly consumed by insanity. Maybe he'd gone mad as he bathed in the blood of his enemies. Who could say? Regardless, it didn't change the obvious. The Sasuke I knew was dead. All that remained was a mad dog to be put down. Something broke deep inside of me. I remember grabbing at the blade, feeling it slice deep into my palms. The searing agony when he inevitably ripped his weapon free and left me to bleed out. I wasn't sure what he said to me after that. His words turned to an endless animal bleat in my head. Something about vengeance? He said he would make everyone and everything pay for what they did to the Uchiha clan, to his brother, and that he would start with me. I couldn't hear the rest. I didn't care. Somehow, the sting of betrayal made it all the worse, the realization that, because of me, a monster would be unleashed upon the world. He was going to kill me. I didn't want to die. Deep down, I was afraid, and that fear got the better of me. That's how it starts, you know. The fever, the rage, the feeling of powerlessness that turns good men cruel. Guts gripping in the dark, I managed to rally Kurama and climb to my feet. Somehow we fought back. If this wasn't my friend, if this stranger wearing Sasuke's face would sooner see the world burn to rose-red cinders and laugh among the ashes, then I had no reason to restrain myself. This wasn't my friend. This was a threat to humanity as we knew it. And so we fought. Not for justice, not for glory, just two men trying to kill each other, one for hate, the other out of fear. I can remember much of what happened afterwards. In our final battle, we rent the world asunder around us, tore open a hole in space and time, and tumbled through. I fell one way. He fell another. I don't know where he wound up and I don't care. I hope he dies from his wounds. Spirits, I hope it hurts. He's dead to me. If I see him again, bah, who am I kidding? Hell, I don't know where I am these days. Feels like I've been falling forever, tumbling through the black as my strength slowly bleeds back into my body. Unable to see, unable to hear. I was so close. Just a little more. I just needed time. Just a little more time. Wait, hold on, now I see a light. Finally. Took long enough. Wait a minute, to that's ground? Falling. Lying. With a terrified yelp, the tattered body of a young man crashed through the void and plummeted to the earth like a falling star. No one heard him. The stormy sky snatched up his screams and dashed his hopes to dust as he shot toward an ignoble end, a stream of golden flames trailing in his fiery wake. For all his strength, all his power and chakra, in his current state he found himself just as powerless against gravity as any man, more so the momentum behind it. Arms sailing, limbs flailing, Naruto Uzumaki couldn't do anything more than fall to his doom, and as he fell he saw a whole new world lay sprawled out below him in all its rustic glory, this humble countryside with beautiful green pastures and a worn road leading out of a wooded forest. For a fleeting flicker of a second he thought he glimpsed someone down there on the path below, a distant speck of color taking on the form of a cloaked figure. Might they have paused to look up at him as he barreled across the horizon? Did they see him? Did they hear him? He never really knew the answer to that question, hurtling at breakneck speeds as he was. If he didn't recover somewhere in the next 10 seconds, he was going to be a red smear on that pretty brown ground. Stop. Pinwheeling his limbs did nothing more than send him spinning in place, shouting in impotent fury. I want to get off this crazy wreath. It wasn't merely a matter of stopping. He had nothing to grab, nothing to grasp, nothing to hold on to. With each passing moment a messy end hurtled closer and closer, the ground even now rushing up to greet him as if he were some long-lost friend. Try as he might, he couldn't think of a landing that didn't end with copious amounts of pain, or worse. Stop screaming and do something, you dolt. Thankfully, a familiar voice jerked the Jinchuriki back to reality before he could become intimate with the dirt. And with that, the seed of an idea planted itself in his mind. No, he couldn't stop himself from falling, not in this state. He was nearly out of chakra after that last battle, and Kurama alongside him. But he could control his fall. And those were trees he was falling toward. The barest beginnings of a grin plucked at Naruto's whiskered cheeks. Kurama! Arms, deep within the recesses of his mind, the fox smirked. About time you took charge. Brace yourself. Gritting his teeth, Naruto flung his arms outward just as a familiar golden glow engulfed him. Branches snapped and tore at his already ruined jack as he crashed into the tree line, all the while valiantly struggling to adjust, contain, then somehow control his rampaging momentum. At his peak it would have been a simple thing to use his remaining truth-seeking orbs to simply levitate if most of them hadn't been destroyed. As things stood he simply didn't have enough energy to recreate the damn things at the moment, much less with so many leaves smacking him in the face. This was a poor landing strategy, i.e., try to grab a branch or something. Came the vain counsel. Naruto grunted. What? Smack. Do you? Smack. Think I'm doing? Smack. This isn't working. Agony arched down the length of the exasperated blonde's spine as he forced his arms back to his sides and briefly submitted to his fate. Gravity seemed intent on dragging him through every branch, twig and tree on the way down. It took more than a considerable effort on his part not to simply squeeze his eyes shut against the pressure and look away out of fear. Every fiber of his being was needed for what came next. Even the slightest lapse of concentration could spell disaster for him. There, in a fit of pique, the shinobi lashed out with a golden claw at the nearest bough that looked large enough to bear his weight. For his foolishness, he nearly wrenched his arms out of their sockets before raw velocity tore him free and sent him slamming through the trees again. But it slowed him. Just a sliver. This time, a grimmer grin tugged at the corner of his mouth. There it was. Progress. He could do this. His second attempt yielded similar results to the first, albeit with less pain this time and more leaves. Juxtaposed to the idea of dashing his skull in against another tree, Naruto tried again. Contrary to the popular saying, the third time was not in fact the charm. So he kept at it, seizing everything within reach, and each time, slowing himself that much more. It wasn't enough. For all his efforts, he couldn't even stick to a tree with his heels. Merely attempting to do so threatened to break his legs. His tumble felt like an eternity. In reality, it barely lasted more than a minute, also not good for him. We're running out of forest. I know, he growled. One final desperate grab finally brought Naruto the escape he so desperately sought from this hellish cycle. This time the next tree he grabbed didn't yield, and he used the chance to swing himself up onto the nearest branch he could find. A wild whoop tore out of him as his battered back slammed against the battered oak, free at last. Alive, only moderately wounded before landing, and with all his important bits in one piece. He'd only demolished half a forest. Really, there was only one thing to say. Ha! He crowed triumphantly, pumping a fist into the air. Nailed it, Prat. Kurama shot back. Oh, shut up. Despite his own aching body, Naruto managed to croak out a laugh. You know you love me. They bickered on and off for a few minutes more, either willing to address the proverbial elephant in the room, forest. They didn't know where they were, or even when at that. Their adventures had landed them in the past more than once before. Who could say where they'd wound up this time? This could be a new world, or an entirely different time period. Neither had any way of knowing the truth until faced with it. Now that their less than stellar landing lay firmly behind them and around them, both man and tailed beast were loath to broach the subject. Naruto wasn't exactly keen on it either. His entire body protested even the most minute of movements, from his recently healed stomach to the countless scrapes and bruises he'd sustained during his fall down to his near chakra exhaustion, to say nothing of the mental wounds he'd sustained in battle. He'd panicked. Gone back on his creed. Broken his word, all to save himself. Here, in this moment, he wanted nothing more than to close his eyes and rest. He didn't want to dwell on his guilt or his failure, where he was, or what he was going to do now. He simply wanted to close his eyes, sleep, and bury the past in his dreams. Fate had other plans. Don't just lie there, boy. You were brought here for a reason. A lone blue eye creaked open. Eh? What was that? Kurama grunted. I didn't say anything. You alright there? No. Groaning, Naruto rolled over on the branch. Did you hear that? He asked. What? The size of your ego swelling. I'm serious. He sat up, craning his neck. I just heard something. Probably a storm or something. Kurama barely twitched an ear in the seal. What does it matter? As he stretched out his senses, sure enough, the distant sound of rolling thunder rumbled through the forest canopy to rattle their ears. Not a moment later, the rattle of an explosion raced after, hot on its heels. Naruto frowned. Storms didn't sound like that. Then what did? Curiosity's touch spurred him upright despite his wounds and still tender muscles, and reluctantly, he rose. Something told him to act. Move. Rise. As much as he might want to pay it no heed, he just couldn't ignore that noise. It set his senses on edge, filling him with dread. It's probably nothing, the old fox said as his host clambered down the tree. And if it is something, it's certainly none of our business. Even so, I want to see. Naruto countered as he slid to a halt. Just to be sure. Feeling jittery, he left a pair of clones behind at the base of the tree with strict instructions to amass as much natural energy as they could. If it came to a fight, he'd be able to use whatever they gathered without straining his already depleted reserves. Of course, the fox had a remark for that too, in all his caustic wit. Oh ho? Strategy? From you? That Uchiha really rattled you, didn't he? Now you're thinking like a shinobi. Stop it, Kurama. A lone muscle jumped in the blonde's jaw as he set out. I mean it. Don't go there. Go where? Came the retort. You're jumping at shadows now, Naruto. Am I? He shot back. You don't know if he's dead yet. You took his arm off. He's gone. Accept it. Nothing would make me happier. They both knew it was a lie. As they drew closer to the source of the noise, the unearthly din, what could that noise be, began to steadily intensity, growing louder and louder with each successive step. By the time Naruto broke free from the forest and hit the dirt road they'd both glimpsed from afar before, he could barely hear himself think. Something lit up the horizon in the distance now, bringing with it strange sounds he wasn't accustomed to. His feet had long since betrayed him by then, and quickened from a walk into a jog, racing down the path until he finally found the source was not what he expected at all. What he saw there turned his blood to ice, if only because he hadn't expected to run right into this. What? A young woman lay sprawled on the ground only yards away from them, wasted and gasping for air, an arrow lodged in her back. As he looked on in quiet horror, a trio of shadowy figures advanced upon her with weapons drawn. One of them resembled a young man. The other two were most certainly women. As he looked on, two of them seized the exhausted girl by the shoulders and hauled her upright, while the third donned something that looked like a pallid white glove. He didn't like the look of that. Even at this range, Naruto found couldn't quite comprehend them properly. Their faces and bodies almost seemed blurred as he hurtled closer. Like static over a grainy image, something was actively interfering with his vision now, preventing him from fully discerning their identities. One of them looked up, and he thought he saw their posture tense as they noticed him. He couldn't be sure. Whatever the cause, the blur stabbed at his eyes yet again, this time bringing with it a lurch of pain. Blasted illusionist! Kurama snarled in the back of his mind, drawing him back to the present with a lurch. Is one of them a genjutsu specialist or something? Naruto didn't hear him, because the girl was looking up at him. Impossibly, her eyes found his across the distance. Please help. That quiet, plaintive gasp tore away the very last scrap of his hesitation. Then there was no more time for thought, just long enough to call upon his old friend. As ever, the fox responded readily enough. You and your bloody curiosity, Bao. Fine. Go! A trickle of golden chakra surged through Naruto's veins like warm honey even as he spoke, reinforcing his weakened form to some semblance of his full might. It would have to be enough. Instinct took the wheel and his body moved of its own accord, a lone kunai flying from his hand as he rocketed forwards into an inhuman leap. Even in his injured state, he hit his target without fail. Sure enough, the woman jerked back with a snarl as the honed knife slammed into her outstretched arm, interrupting whatever sordid ritual she was attempting before she could begin. Less than a yard away now, he heard her curse, and shouted her down with one of his own. Let go of her, you bastards! Then he slammed into them like a falling star. In a single arc of vicious vermilion light, the weary shinobi came crashing down between the fair maiden and her captors. The sheer force of his landing kicked up a plume of dust, blinding all present. Nor did he stop there. He was still far from finished. Golden chakra arms burst from his back as he spun, swinging back with an ominous creak to form a towering hand to loom over them all. One that came crashing down against the earth in a hurricane of molten motion. Hard. It was a wild strike all things considered. Little more than a delaying tactic meant to drive the girl's tormentors back and gain some distance. He didn't expect it to work quite so well. Twin fists crashed down against the earth, splintering the soil like so much broken glass. Instead of startling them as he'd intended, his attack physically drove the pursuing trio back, sending two of the three tumbling away while the third leaped away to safety. In that instant, whatever static had fallen over his vision fell away, replaced by clear, glorious clarity. Without thinking he laid a hand on the girl's back and sent what he hoped was a healing pulse of chakra into her back. Sure enough, familiar mark on his palm stared back at him from her ruined shoulders, bringing with it a silent pang of relief. And with that, he saw. Baffled blue eyes took in the scene before him as well as the unlikely trio arrayed against him. A silver-haired young man clad in burnt clothes astride a pair of metal legs. What the hell? A girl with striking green hair, red eyes, and dark skin matched by faded leathers, and finally a dangerous-looking woman bearing stunning black hair and an eerie gaze, her body all but wrapped up in a red dress. If this most unlikely trio held one thing in common, it was that each looked just as confused as he felt. Had he really hit the earth that hard? He hadn't meant to. Straightening up only made things worse. Green hair reached for her weapons, and metal legs over there looked about 3 seconds from lunging at him. His reward for this selfless act? The girl he'd saved yanked him backward. Seriously? He squawked. This is the thanks Agito. Incredulous, the shinobi turned to find himself face to face with a girl now kissed by the sun, held aloft by unseen forces, wreathed in lighting, her body sheathed in the elements, the storm itself. Furious hazel eyes blazed down at him, set within a tanned face framed by a small frown and shoulder-length hair the color of autumn chestnuts. Clad in the tattered remains of what once resembled an off-white blouse with a brown vest, corset and pants, the young woman nevertheless still stood hovered, her ground in the face of the unknown. Her armor was another curious matter, from the gold bracer on her left arm, to matching bracelets on her right wrist. Whomever she was, she clearly liked the color yellow as much as he did orange. Hells, she even wore a pair of tawny armored boots in that very color alongside a single golden pauldron atop her right shoulder. Not that he was focused on said shoulder, because those fiery orbs were now very much focused upon him. Hello there? He offered, scratching the back of his head sheepishly as she gazed down at him from on high. Look, I'm sorry I interrupted whatever this, but you were hurt and, kid? Kurama chimed in. Might want to look again. In response, the young maiden silently dropped a notched arrow at his feet, the very projectile that had been lodged within her back a moment ago. When he looked back up at this strange warrior, he didn't even see any semblance of a wound, just a simple tear in the fabric of her blouse. Well, apparently he'd given her enough time to heal or what have you, and as an individual who'd once regrown a lung, seeing that from the outside and was a little frightening all things considered. In hindsight, he wasn't sure what made him take the girl's side. Was it instinct? Concern? Some sixth sense? The sheer animosity he sensed from those three? Who could say? Regardless, he made his choice and stepped forward. It changed everything. Right, okay. He flung up his hands, keenly aware of the girl's clenched fists at her sides. You got better. I can see that. But listen. I'm not with them. I swear, I'm on your side. I helped you, remember? Rather than reply, the recovering maiden continued to glower at him, her lithe form held aloft by celestial winds. The world held its breath. Naruto didn't relish the idea of fighting 4 people at once, much less when he was running on fumes. He had enough chakra for a few feats, maybe the odd clone or two, but if it came to a prolonged fight, when she finally nodded, he felt his shoulders slump in muted relief. Phew. A fresh smile bloomed on his lips as he wiped a bead of sweat from his brow. Great. And here I thought this was going to be hard? He never had the chance to finish that sentence as a vicious kick slammed into his unprotected back to launch him forward. Rage turned his vision red and the shinobi lashed out in kind to swing the back of his fist at his opponent's face. Maddeningly, he found it to be the same metal-legged bastard from before, taunting him now with that indefatigable grin. It should have been a clean hit. Even in his weakened state, he possessed more than enough brute force to knock someone out with a solid right hook if he connected. Instead, his clenched knuckles swept through an illusion of hollow air. The hell? This had to be a trick. There could be no other word for it as his fist slammed through another afterimage after the first, the smirking assassin inexplicably vanishing before his very eyes. By the time he realized what was happening, said assailant had reappeared and slammed a kick against the back of his right knee, sending him stumbling once more. Tumbling to his feet, he retaliated in kind, only to meet open air for a third time. A blur of mottled black hurtled past his head as the assassin rang his skull like a bell. Naruto sucked in a breath through his teeth. That hurt. Inwardly, however, his mind began to race. The hell? I know I hit him. Didn't I? It's that blasted girl. This time a fresh surge of chakra accompanied Kurama's voice. She's using an illusion of some sort. Leave her to me. Focus on nuts and bolts over there. But what about? A torrent of flames sailed overhead as their unnamed ally shot past like a fiery comet, dragging the emerald-haired girl with her. I think she can handle herself, boy. Unless you'd rather get in the middle of that? Nope. He decided after a moment's pause. She's got this. All the world became a blur as he closed with his opponent again, this time, not rushing in, careful to keep his guard up. He'd learned his lesson once already. When a roundhouse punch sailed towards his head, he didn't try to block it, choosing instead to let it sweep harmlessly past his ear. He was more than ready to return it. That barreling kick found itself intercepted by a golden arm and promptly returned tenfold as the whiskered warrior chambered one of his own into his opponent's face. Infuriatingly, his foe took the hit and rolled away, tumbling back to his feet like a graceful acrobat. Inwardly, he rolled his eyes. Great. This was going to be one of those battles. He would have been content to simply beat his opponent down in stoic silence. But of course his opponent had to chime in. This isn't your fight, friend. Feels like it. He growled back, taking on a stance. And you're no friend of mine. Who are you? Why are doing this? What's this girl done to you? In the distance, the red-eyed girl screamed. His enemy seemed to take a vindictive pleasure in it. The assassin scoffed, and snapped a kick at his head again. Did you really think I'd just tell you what we're up to? You will if you want to stay conscious. Slim shoulders rolled in a half-hearted shrug. Have it your way. Remind me to lay some flowers on your grave. Gods, you really are insufferable. Whomever he was good. Very good. Those metal limbs hurt whenever the assassin landed a kick, block or no. But he'd seen better and fought worse. He'd sparred with Rock Lee and his 8 gates. Fought down Madara in a contest of taijutsu, and somehow lived to tell the tale. This assassin made for poor sport by comparison. Sure, he hit hard enough, but his primary method of attacking consisted of powerful kicks alongside the occasional odd punch. There was no substance to it. No form. Without the man's fiendish friend there to distract and distort his vision, Naruto soon found himself gaining the upper hand in due course. It was a hard-fought battle, but soon enough, he gained the measure of his enemy. And he wasn't alone. With a single mental command, he willed the pair of clones he'd created several minutes ago to disperse. In an instant, the torrent of natural energy they'd gathered flooded his aching limbs. Blue eyes blazed gold. My turn. In hindsight, Mercury might have realized something was amiss. Maybe he recognized his own inherent danger. The young man before him had come out of nowhere to disrupt their plans, and despite his wounds, he seemed more than capable of holding himself in a fight. And now those eyes, the way they changed color, it set him on edge. A tiny spark of fear fanned itself to life in his chest as his opponent beckoned him forward, crooking 4 fingers toward him in a traditional come-hither gesture. His entire demeanor stood altered, just like his stance. Just who the hell was this guy? Railing against his fear, the assassin went back on the offensive, launching into a flurry of blows meant to drive the whiskered warrior's face in. He may as well have pounded his legs against a brick wall for all the good it did. None of them made contact. His opponent didn't budge. Each strike found itself deflected or evaded with minimal effort, swept aside like a child's inept flailing. When he finally deigned to attack, Mercury never saw it coming. 10 hands snapped together in a singular motion, and an open-palmed slap collided with his face, sending the assassin staggering away. It brought back less than pleasant memories. Memories that made him slip, memories that left him open for the roundhouse that followed. Half a heartbeat later, Mercury found himself sprawled out on his back. One punch. He'd nearly gotten knocked out with a single punch, and it burned. It was galling, being reminded of his powerlessness. What is going on? How are you doing this? It's called chakra, son. You wouldn't know. Mercury rallied regardless. Shut up. A sandal-clad foot stomped down at his head, forcing the assassin to tumble back to his feet or risk further injury. His mad roll earned him an elbow to the back of the head for his troubles, a kick to the gut doubled him over as twin hands took hold of his face and smashed it against the knee. A heel palm sent him reeling again, and finally, he saw an opening. Of course Mercury took it. How could he not? Just drop dead, you damn. Shunting the bone-crunching heel aside as easily as one would a rebellious child, Naruto trapped the limb against his ribs and held it fast with his right arm. Mercury blanched when he saw the metal immediately begin to buckle beneath the strain. That was mildly concerning. A human shouldn't be able to do that. A human definitely shouldn't be able to buckle his leg like that. Said confusion warped into further dread when a taut fist slapped into his throat. Air abandoned him, leaving him retching for breath. Reeling back in startled pain as much as surprise, he realized too late what was about to happen. Ah hell, Naruto's fist snapped back. Clench your teeth, pretty boy. Say what you would about the blonde's lack of tactics. He hit hard. Mercury never saw the punch, but he certainly felt it. His snapped back and his body went limp. Naruto didn't even deign to look back to make certain he was down for the count. Damn, but it had felt good to wipe the smile off that prick's face. Unfortunately, a trio of curved arrows wedged themselves in his right arm as he turned to search for his original target. Lovely. The black set was up again, and he had another wound to worry about. Naruto tore them free with a grunt, and sure enough, he found the woman in the red dress sneering at him. Her blades combined to form some sort of composite bow. Well, that was just dandy, wasn't it? Today was full of surprises. What is wrong with you people? Part of him tensed when he presented his back to the girl to face his remaining adversaries. But the glowing maiden never struck him down. Something warm pressed against his shoulders. Even then it took him a moment to realize the stranger had willingly moved to stand back to back with him. Instead, a torrent of frozen leaves swirled forth to slash at their enemies. I'm still running on fumes here, kid. Kurama warned him again. Neither of us have had a chance to recover. And this. Now, got it. Shock and awe it is. Let's do this. He offered only one retort. His old friend answered the call with sound and aplomb, bursting out of him like a great golden god with the howling fury of 1,000 storms. At his full towering height, he barely felt his ally leap onto his back, but he snarled in triumph, all the same. Floored by this sudden transformation, their remaining attackers didn't have time to retreat. The shockwave of his transformation did that for her. Go for the green girl. The old Kitsune counseled. Her illusions are dangerous enough. Crimson eyes snapped downward. Gotcha. Credit where it was due. Emerald tried to dodge. She really did, but she just wasn't fast enough. Realizing her peril too late, the green-haired girl nevertheless attempted to backpedal, even backflip out of the way. For all her speed and agility, she ultimately failed to evade Kurama's anger. A golden tail still snared her body and sent her spinning into the sky. Another seized her airborne body and slammed her down against the compacted earth with a vicious crunch. No! Someone cried out. For a fleeting instant Naruto felt a wrench of guilt. The poor girl would probably never walk again, if she survived at all. He knew the telltale crunch of bones anywhere. That brief regretful pang vanished as a crystallized glass arrow slashed across his face. Irritation swatted all remnants of regret aside like an annoying gnat as he spun, sweeping all 9 of his tails against the ground with blinding speed. As luck would have it, he also caught the boy with the metal legs just as he came to and sent him sprawling. The woman with dark hair proved more fortunate. She was farther back and skipped away out of reach. But rather than attack again as he'd expected, she actually hesitated. Only for the merest of moments, but that reluctance was there. Perhaps it was the sight of her fallen comrade that stilled her. Perhaps she feared meeting the same fate. Still, her hesitation suited him just fine. It gave his drained reserves a moment to replenish. The desperation burned in her eyes, however, was all too real. She's mine! Sheltered behind him, the brunette made a noise of less than pleasant disagreement. Naruto couldn't help himself. He actually snorted at her response. Don't think she agrees with you. Still the woman continued to rail at him, heedless of her own peril. Move, you damn brat! I swear, if you don't, you'll what? Red eyes snapped down to her faltering form. Kill me? I've died before. I got better. And if this your bestit ain't enough, why protect her? The blackhead snapped another arrow at him, to no avail. He merely swayed out of the way. This isn't your fight. You don't even know her. Cinder's words, though he knew not her name, sparked something in the whiskered warrior. An ember of anger. Pride. She was right. This wasn't his fight. By all rights there was no need for him to get involved. And yet, a thorn of fury pricked his heart and held him back. However much he might fail others, however cruel some might call him, he still couldn't bring himself to turn his back on someone in need. You're right about one thing. A lone finger jutted forward. I don't need a reason to help someone. You, on the other hand, overkill? Kurama inquired with a grim grin. Naruto raised his hands, palms splayed. Overkill. Black light burst before his outstretched fingertips, and the glowing effigy of Kurama's skull burned brighter into existence, an unholy light coalescing at the end his gaping jaws. A spiraling sphere of condensed chakra, one that continued to swell and grow with each passing moment. Even in his exhausted state, it took but a moment to bring what remained of his power to bear upon the enraged woman. Large. Larger. Largest. Naruto held it a moment longer, allowing the arc of his chakra to watching the woman's eyes widen in growing horror. It would be so easy to simply let it go, to unleash hell and eradicate her utterly. He should. He'd be in the right to do so, surely. To kill someone. Instead, he missed. Damn it! I just can't do it. Rather than obliterate her where she stood, Naruto willfully jerked his head to the right at the last instant. Averted by sheer force of will, the blast roared up into the sky like an arrow loosed from a bow, the sheer shockwave of which flattened everyone present. Streaking into the sky with a mournful howl, it continued to climb, higher and higher until at last it reached its zenith. All eyes tracked its movement, the battle briefly forgotten but this unheralded display. For a fleeting instant the tailed beast bomb hung in the heavens, defying the laws of nature and physics alike. Then without word or warning it burst, rendering the world went white with light, banishing even the clouds themselves from the sky. In the aftermath, his opponent stumbled upright, eyes wide with disbelief. That's it then? Kurama chided as his ethereal form began to fade. I'm out of chakra. Try not to die while I recover. Naruto relented with a wordless grunt as gravity sank its cruel claws into him. To his credit, he managed to land in a pointed crouch rather than fall on his face like a fool. Even then, the mere act of standing threatened to reopen his wounds and send him plummeting back into the black. He must have looked it too, because a spark of confidence glimmered back to life in the eyes of his adversary. Leave. Now. Those two words rattled earth and sky alike. Next time we won't miss. It was a truth as much as a bluff. With his reserve still at an all-time low, it was all he could do to breathe. A wordless growl was Cinder's sole response, though he knew not her name. For all his bluster and bravado she appeared ready to strike solely out of spite. Indeed, her burning gaze threatened to sear itself into his memory, such was its heat. No, that wasn't the word he was looking for. This was something more. Hunger. Yes, that one. Whatever this power was, this woman wanted it. She needed it. She craved it, with a single-minded drive that rivaled his own. In her eyes, her teammates didn't matter. They were merely means to an end. She saw only the power before her. Still, she'd be a fool to attack now, wouldn't she? Much to his alarm the witch darted forward, poised to cut him down, and the heavens answered in kind. Naruto never heard the lightning, but he most certainly saw it. A bold bolt of white and gold snapped over his left shoulder with blinding, leaving skin tingling but otherwise as it arced past. Cinder wasn't so lucky. Caught in mid-leap, she had no time to escape. No strategy to save her, no brilliant plan to deliver her from harm. Time seemed to slow, all the colors of the world fading to gray. The assassin's eyes widened a fraction of an inch, her mouth forming a small, round O of surprise and muted horror. Then time reasserted itself with a vengeance, and the acrid tang of burnt flesh filled the air. Whomever she was, the maiden didn't hesitate. Wholly unprepared for this sudden assault, Cinder didn't even have the chance to defend herself, caught dead in the gut and forcefully flung away at impossible speed. Her body folded limply around the blast with a single tortured cry, struck the ground, rolled, then sprang back up. Faint sparks shimmered from her form, vanishing even as Naruto noticed them. A hand settled upon his shoulder, and he risked a wary glance behind him, just in time to see the maiden standing with her free hands stretched toward the sky. Furious hazel eyes focused upon the assassin, burning as though lit from within, her expression fixed into a single, wild emotion. And so she spoke. You want this power so badly? Then take it. The words burst from her in an enraged sob. Take it all. No sooner had she done so than another towering bolt descended from the heavens above to strike the assassin down where she stood. This time, there could be no mistaking the agony behind her cry. Then another came. Another still. Another. Upon the fourth such blast her knees finally gave out, leaving her body to buckle to the floor in a heap. This time she did not rise again. Only steam wafted from her broken form, and she made no move beyond the odd twitch of her limbs. Despite himself, Naruto winced, his heart stirring in pity once more. That looked painful. She hadn't simply been blasted. The poor woman been outright cooked from within. She might never recover from those burns without assistance. He'd only just opened his mouth to congratulate his ally when a groan pierced the gloom. And they called this inexperienced? Someone grumbled under their breath. What the hell, I didn't sign up for this. Much to their shared ire, the boy with the metal legs was still conscious. Standing even. Though battered and bruised, his limbs still hadn't failed him. But rather than fight, this assassin only raised his hands in a gesture of submission. As he looked on, he sidled up to the green-haired girl and slung her over his right shoulder. With only a modicum of effort he performed the same for his quivering companion, pulling her into his arms. Never did his gaze leave them, not a once, not even for a moment. He looked ready to bolt at the slightest provocation. Let's call it a draw this time, eh? He kept his posture slack up for emphasis, despite cradling his wounded comrades. What do you say? Naruto sucked in a breath that tasted of ash. Give me one good reason not to cut you down here and now. A silver brow rose. Because you've got nothing left in the tank there, Blondie. Slim shoulders rolled in a half-hearted shrug. Guess I could say the same for your friend after her little tantrum. But don't feel bad, even in defeat. He managed a bitter mocking smile. We're pretty gassed ourselves. You two beat us pretty badly, then surrender. The question didn't come from him, but the maiden watching over him. If you do that, you'll be shown mercy. Nah. That smile turned cruel as the young man shook his head. Not gonna happen, Amber. We're not quite done with you just yet. Naruto felt the young maiden stiffen behind him. Before either could challenge him, the silver-haired warrior urgently nudged one of his allies. Hey, He coughed. Wake up already? We need to get out of here. You're not going anywhere. He leveled one last baleful glance in their direction. Right. This isn't over, Whiskers. A muscle jumped in Naruto's jaw. Hey, the world blurred, or perhaps he did, and the trio vanished into the gloom even as he reached for them. For a moment, he refused to lower his guard, nearly expecting some semblance of a sneak attack. Seconds passed. Then a minute. Finally, he just couldn't take it anymore. The tension drained out of him, and his body sagged, fatigue and chakra exhaustion at last extracting their long-awaited due. Now that the battle was won, he finally had an instant to breathe, to see just whom he'd saved. The same girl who'd saved him in turn. Amber, the assassin, had called her. Huh, not a bad name. Wincing, he looked up at her. Though her hair hung in disarray and her face was smudged with grit as well as dirt, the huntress favored him with a small, hesitant smile. Gods, she was beautiful. Her hand was probably the only thing holding him up right about now. If it wasn't for her staff, they both would have fallen over. She didn't question him, didn't demand his identity nor to know his motives for aiding her. No, in the end, she only had one word for him. A single word of joy. Kindness, humble gratitude. Such a stark contrast to her earlier outburst, that it momentarily floored him, was all that greeted him. Thanks. Strong arms crushed around him all at once in a fierce embrace, drawing a startled grunt from the startled blonde as the brunette all but launched herself at him. He barely had the strength to sputter, such was his surprise at this sudden outburst. Had that been the end of it, he might have escaped with his conscience intact. Alas, the floodgates opened, and much to his chagrin, Amber buried her head in his shoulder. She began babbling then, a stream of rapid, endless words that he could barely recognize, much less decipher. He recognized one phrase, however, all too well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The Jinchuriki wheezed out a pained breath. Geez, what the hell did I get mistletoe this time? He never heard her response. In that moment his wounds caught up with him. With a wordless laugh, he pitched forward and finally knew the blessed release of slumber. Me? A huntsman? Doesn't really sound like my thing. I'm not asking you to be a damn huntsman. Crow took another wig of his flask. I'm asking you to look after her. Who? Amber? She can look after herself. Confusion scrawled across the younger man's face. Besides, she'll be fine without me, hey? His words warped into a grunt as the huntsman's hand shot out and seized him by the collar. In the next instant he found himself rammed against the nearest wall. What are you, dense as a brick? No. She won't. Whoever did this wanted one thing from her. A stern finger jabbed him in the forehead. Something you don't know about. They're not stupid. They're not going to stop, and she's not going to be alright. You hear me? The words escaped him in a snarl. They're gonna try again, and again until they get what they want. She might not be so lucky next time. So, unless you expect someone else to fall out of the sky and help her the next time she's in trouble. With a grunt, he released him. Man up and take responsibility for your actions. Resolution. That's quite the tale. Ozpin considered himself an excellent judge of character. In all his years and countless lives, the headmaster had learned to read an individual as one might a good novel. Call it an acquired skill of sorts, a talent he'd garnered over so many painful lifetimes. Ruthlessly cultivated, honed to a razor's edge, he was able to discern hidden truths at a mere glance. The way someone held themselves could tell him a subject's past, from the set of their jaw to the telltale twitch of their hand. Even the merest movement would likewise betray their mental state, whether they were prone to fits of paranoia, angry outbursts, or even sporadic bursts of energy. So yes, Ozpin could certainly read people. And the young man sitting before him at his desk? This silent figure refusing to budge so much as an inch from his seat. His face told of pages upon pages full of anger, volumes of despair, pain, yet also truth. There was no deception here, no attempts to gloss over some hidden secret. Somewhere deep inside of him, in spite of all his injuries nor the deep bags lurking under eyes that hinted at something deeper than mere raw exhaustion, this young man still carried some semblance of determination in him. A night's rest had done him good, it seemed. He was certainly a better sight now than he'd been back then. Clad in a simple blue tunic and contrasting dark pants in place of his ruined rags, he nevertheless sat up straight in his seat and met the headmaster's gaze without flinching in spite of everything. And to think, just yesterday he'd been sprawled over Amber's shoulder like a rag doll. Were it not for the fretful fall maiden even now at the whiskered warrior's side, poking and prodding him to speak, Ozpin might have thought the boy mute upon their second meeting. He was clearly choosy about those he trusted at that. He'd even gone so far as to refuse medical treatment from anyone but Amber. It had taken several hours to wring this story out of him at all. Even then he suspected the young man was holding part of it back. Oz could respect that, at least. Some secrets were best kept in reserve. Regardless, he still seemed very much wary of this brave new world in which he found himself. Now then, let me see if I have the right of this. You say you fell from the sky? This whist warrior, for Ozpin couldn't think of any other term for him, finally groaned. See, when you say it like that, Gramps, you make me sound like the crazy one in the room here. Amber promptly jabbed him with her elbow for his temerity. What are you doing? Don't call the headmaster that. What's wrong with it? The blonde sputtered, flailing spectacularly in his seat. He's got white hair. It just slipped out, you know. On the contrary. Restraining a small smile, Oz adjusted his spectacles and steepled his fingers together. I believe you to be quite sane. Finally! Much to his surprise, this response actually garnered him a delighted cry from his as-of-yet unnamed ally. You're only the second person to hear me out and say that. Amber's quiet blush told us all he needed to know on that matter, but before he could think to inquire, someone else did it for him. So you're sane. A gravely growl interjected over his shoulder. Let's call it that. Why are we listening to this kid, Oz? Falling out of the sky? Come on, he's clearly off his rocker. Hey! Amber all but shot up out of her chair and bolted to her feet in a burst of fiery light. That's uncalled for, Crow. In case you've forgotten, he saved my life. When no response was immediately forthcoming, Oz knew what would come next. Amber was many things, but her compassion and by definition her rash of impulsiveness was nothing short of legendary in Beacon. Sure enough, she proved him right soon thereafter. And where were you, come to think of it? You didn't arrive until everything was already over. And are you drunk? He's always drunk. Glinda put in mildly from her place at his side. Remarkably, she'd barely said 2 words since they'd convened. Who would have thought she'd stick up for Crow? Course I am. The clink of half-empty flasks sloshed just out of sight. And those people that attacked you? That brat could be with them too, for all you know. You're being paranoid. Why would he defend me, then? Amber's rebuttal proved sharp and instant. Naruto's a good person, and you're being naive. Oz didn't need to see Crow's face to sense the suspicion seething in his words, just as he didn't need to look at Amber to know she'd taken affront to him, and so their argument continued to escalate. He already knew his old friend was rolling his eyes somewhere behind him, just as he knew Crow'd taken up a flanking position on his right in case their guest proved himself hostile. He could all but taste the animosity lurking in his voice, a hair trigger waiting to snap at the slightest provocation. Only natural of story laid out before them was incredible, to say the least. Almost enough to make them second-guess everything they knew about their world. It made his office feel small, somehow. But he believed their words to be true nonetheless. As to the series of unfortunate events that had led to this moment, someone would have to remedy that. Now. Oz raised his arms as the two nearly came to blows. Calm down. We're all on the same side, are we? Crow challenged. Because the way I see it, it wouldn't be him. Enough. Both of you. A tan arm shot out like a snake to snare Amber's wrist and jerk her backwards. In the same instant another hand slammed into Crow's chest with enough force to make the older man stumble back half a pace. Oz blinked, momentarily alarmed by the spectacle. Somehow in the span of one instant and the next, Naruto had somehow managed to wedge himself between the pair and force them apart as though he were a parent disciplining a pair of naughty children. Amber was one thing, but one didn't move Crow that easily. It was his first real display of combat prowess that day, one that lent further credence to his earlier claims. Moreover, how he'd done it brought the conversation to a grinding halt. Unfortunately, this brief bout of heroics backfired in a way that Ozpin failed to anticipate, because now there were 2 of him. While one held Amber back, another Naruto had inexplicably materialized in a plume of smoke to give Crow a harsh shove. When the hunter shoved right back, the second Naruto vanished in another misty haze, leaving the hunter gaping in surprise. Oz didn't much blame him. Glinda looked about as mystified as he felt. If he didn't know better, he'd call it a strange semblance of some sort, except the boy had just openly professed to be from another world. The mystic in him was eager to know more. How many copies could he make? Could they perform menial tasks? How much damage could they sustain? Countless questions buzzed about in his head like eager bees. Fascinating, Glinda murmured. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. Utterly unaware of the attention he'd drawn to himself, the original turned a stoic gaze upon Amber. Look, just let it go, all right? None of this is your fault. Sure enough, the huntress wilted beneath his gaze. She hung her head. Sorry. Then the boy turned his wrath on Crow. All right, buddy? Sure enough, those keen blue eyes locked onto the huntsman harshly as he turned towards him. Who shoved a stick up your ass? Crow, caught taking another swing of his flask, utterly choked. The noise he made stuck somewhere between a grunt and a squawk. Ozpin did not snort. No. Not at all. No, not in the least. Amber, proved another matter entirely. Glinda actually smiled. Just a touch. Crow's face was a study in contrast. Now that his old friend had finally stepped back into view where he could see him, Oz found that his expression proved most telling. He couldn't tell if the man was surprised to have someone stand up to him, or startled by the sheer crassness of Naruto's remark. In short, the poor man looked as though he'd bitten into an incredibly sour lemon, while simultaneously being told the greatest secret in all the universe. Honestly, it almost made Oz wish he had a camera. Pity. Apparently Crow felt the same, because he knocked his flask back again. Well, damn. Kid's got claws after all. Color me impressed. Lovely. Crisis averted once more. After yesterday's events, tensions were running well. Strained was an inadequate word for the way he felt right now. Amber, chief amongst them. Poor girl. She'd been through so much already even before this attempt on her life. Now they were subjecting her to this. At least she seemed to have made a friend in the midst of things. and then said friend had to open his mouth again. They were trying to take her powers, you dolt. Her life. A horrible epiphany struck Ozpin. His gaze sought out an embarrassed Amber. You told him, didn't you? It was not a question. Of course I did, sir. The brunette stood at attention, though her face burned red with silent shame. He should know what he's fighting for. By the gods, she'd actually gone and done it. Those weren't your secrets to divulge, Amber. She wilted with a whine. I only told him how I got my powers, that's all. Naruto's scowl switched targets. Yeah, about that. Oz could already feel the beginnings of a massive migraine blooming in the back of his head, and massaged his temples in a vain attempt to stave off what he knew would be coming next. While it was true that they hadn't necessarily told Amber everything about the great threat they faced with good reason, she knew more than most. Enough to make things rather complicated for Beacon's new arrival. For all his attitude, he'd proven that he was no fool. He'd have questions. Merely being informed about a maiden's power threatened to paint a target on his back. But after what he'd done, it was far too late for him to back out now. Even if he were to leave at this very moment, he'd be hounded for the rest of his life out of spite, if nothing else. Ozpin fought down a small shudder at the thought, a quiet chill shooting down the base of his spine. By now, Salem likely knew of this man's existence. She wouldn't take kindly to this sudden setback. Even in kinder days she'd never been the sort to stand idly by and allow herself to be humiliated. That was precisely what Naruto had done to her. By Amber's own account, he'd made her followers look like rank amateurs. This as well have been a slap in her face for all the good they'd done. She'd try again, of course, she always would, be it through force or cunning. Salem had been pushed back before, but she always returned. He knew the way her mind worked. She would think he'd been hiding some secret weapon and speed up her timetable, escalate her plans, if not worse, hound this young man to the ends of the earth. But the blonde surprised him yet again. Now wait just a minute, Naruto continued, raising his arms to fend off further inquiries as everyone turned toward him. What I'm fighting for, I didn't agree to fight for anything else here. When no one objected, he hastened onward. I helped Amber because she needed it, sure, but she's safe with I just want to get back to my world. Be that as it may, and there was the crux of the matter that Oz was hesitant to broach. I'm afraid we lack the means to help you at present. Amber stepped to the young man and laid a hand on his shoulder with a feather's touch. Long eyelashes fluttered up at the baffled blonde. You're going to leave? Just like that? Naruto sputtered. Well, I mean, oh, she was good. To her credit, the fall maiden stood her ground and didn't budge, even in the face of his hesitation. Nor did she let go of him. It was as if a switch had flipped somewhere deep inside her. In that instant, he recalled why she'd been chosen for this power. For all her empathy and compassion, Amber was downright vicious in a fight. Impulsive and rash she may well be, but she knew her loyalties. If she felt she owed someone a debt, no matter how minor, she would do everything in her power to see it repaid. And judging by the way she kept stealing glance at Naruto, she owed him a great deal indeed. No, it might even be the beginnings of, well now, I saw it in her eyes, the way she held herself, preening as Naruto looked at her. Realization dawned like the coming season and tugged at the corner of his mouth in the form of a small smile. Flirting was far less destructive in his day, but who was he to interfere here? Let the girl follow her heart. Time would tell if the object of her affections felt the same. Say what you would about her lack of combat experience, Amber still had a good head on her shoulders. Better than most, even. While she hadn't mastered her powers not yet with an attitude like that, and perhaps a better grasp on her, she'd likely fully realize them within a few years. Years they didn't have, he reminded himself. Naruto was of a different mind on the matter. He knew next to nothing about maidens and grim, let alone this talk of semblances and aura. In his mind he'd done all needed to do already. He'd laid his life on the line for a complete stranger, and seen her safely away from those who would do her harm. Amber was clearly safe now, ensconced behind the sturdy walls of Beacon. Ozpin was sure to keep an eye on her now, if only to keep her safe in the future. Surely she wouldn't let herself be caught out like that again. By rights, he had done all that should be expected of him and more. He owed them nothing. These people had problems of their own. This wasn't his world. Wasn't his home. It sounded as if war was on the horizon for these people, and he was so very tired of fighting. But could he really be satisfied with this? Could he really just walk away? After all he'd said and done, could he forsake his beliefs again and just abandon them? Risking a glance over his shoulder was a mistake. It gave voice to Naruto's own innermost fears and lent them a face. Amber's face. Even now she was still looking to him for an answer, still holding onto his arm, clinging, really for dear life. It would have been the meanest thing to tear his arm free from her. Now that he'd recovered, he easily outclassed her when it came to raw strength. But he couldn't do it. For all her power, all her might, all her majesty and magic, she looked small. Afraid. Alone. He'd seen her fling enemies around like rag dolls, call down lightning from the sky like an angry goddess to smite those who dared attack her. Yet here, in this moment, she was as weak as he'd ever seen her be. Please, she whispered, regarding him with teary eyes. Don't go. Don't look at me, brat. In response to this inner turmoil opened a slitted eye within his mind. This is your choice to make. Hey! Naruto blanched inwardly at the blasé retort. What happened to it being none of our business? You made it our business, came the growl. When you dove into that fight. He was still dithering when Ozpin made him an offer. I understand your plight. The headmaster raised his voice patiently, drawing the blonde's attention once more with his soothing tones. There are many aspects of your situation that you don't yet know, secrets we can't tell you until we're certain you're with us. But consider what you do know for a moment. Our fall maiden is in great peril, due in no small part to her inexperience. He raised his right hand toward Amber for emphasis, and the girl, realizing she was still holding his hand, jerked back as if she'd been scalded. Peril that you helped avert certainly, but that danger is not yet past. Far from it, in fact. Wait a minute. The Jinchuriki frowned. You meant his isn't over? Something ancient and unknowable gleamed in Ozpin's eyes. Did you think they would stop after a single failed attempt? Of course not. Naruto faltered half a beat at the kernel of truth lurking in those words. Well, no. It's just the two of us beat them. That'll slow them down, won't it? For a time, perhaps. Glinda interjected, capturing his attention before he could pause to dwell on the matter further. But they won't stop altogether. I'm afraid they've only just begun. Thankfully we have you to thank for her timely rescue. And if I hadn't been there? He asked. The teacher didn't hesitate. She would be dead. Those cold words struck Naruto like a slap across the face. Well, he managed eloquently, blinking at her response. Shit. Amber tucked her head and gripped her wrist when he glanced at her, unable to meet his gaze. Her sudden reticence led Naruto to believe she knew something he didn't. Something important. Downright vital, even. His mind flashed back to the incredible display of power Amber had brought to bear upon her would-be assailants. She'd commanded the very elements themselves and nearly lost regardless. Her powers would have been gone, stolen by a party with less honorable intentions. Granted, he was confident in his own abilities, but could anyone else stand against a power like that? Naruto wrinkled his nose, not liking where this was going. Not in the least. I feel like I'm missing pieces of the story here, Crow snorted. That's putting it mildly. We could use your help, son. Ozpin prodded. What, you want me to be a huntsman or something? He frowned. Doesn't really sound like my thing. We're not asking you to be a damn huntsman. Crow took another swig of his flask. He's asking you to look after her. Who? Amber? She can look after herself. Confusion scrawled across the younger man's face. Besides, she'll be fine without me, hey? His words warped into a grunt as the huntsman's hand shot out and seized him by the collar. In the next instant he found himself rammed against the nearest wall. What are you, dense as a brick? No. She won't. Whoever did this wanted one thing from her. A stern finger jabbed him in the forehead. Something you don't know about. They're not stupid. They're not going to stop, and she's not going to be alright. You hear me? The words escaped him in a snarl. They're gonna try again, and again and again until they get what they want. She might not be so lucky next time, so unless you expect someone else to fall out of the sky and save her the next time she's in trouble. With a grunt, he released him. Man up and take responsibility for your actions. Amber fluttered to his side in a burst of motion, quick to clutch at his hand and help him up. Ultimately, it was her expression that began to tip the scales. She'd never asked for this power. Never wanted it. This gift had been forced upon her against her will and, like him, painted a target on her back. It almost reminded him of the Akatsuki back in his world. No, it did remind him of that vile group. If this world had their own version of that organization, people seeking to harness and use those abilities for who knew what, uncaring of the lives they took, was he really going to abandon Amber to such a fate? Could he? Didn't stop Crow from flinging another parting insult at him before he spoke, though. You're worse than my sister. Coward. Oh, how that word burned. Coward? Amber swung around. How dare you? I fought. We fought. Naruto nearly split the sky open when he MMPH, said Blonde, sucked in a sharp breath through his teeth and clamped a hand over her mouth before she could finish. Too little, too late. Ozpin had already heard, and for once, the headmaster found himself at a loss for words. Crow was looking at him as though he'd grown a second head. And as for Glindall, he didn't know what to make of that half-lidded look of hers. Almost as if she wanted to sit him down and assail him with endless questions just to see what made him tick. This was precisely why he'd wanted to avoid that very subject. A tailed best bomb wasn't exactly subtle even under normal circumstances. He hadn't been subtle back there on the road. Not at all. Not in the least. Bah! Amber wriggled free with a gasp. Why did you stop me? Wait! Crow croaked, suddenly sounding very hoarse. That was him? Gods above, these people were going to think of him as a walking bomb if this kept up. Worse were Crow's words. Even now they gnawed him like a host of worms, shredding his self-control. Coward. I'm not a... The words tasted like ash in his throat even as he spoke them. Wasn't he? He'd broken his word once already, buckled when the chips were down. Unbidden, his hand flew to his stomach, remembering that nearly lethal wound he'd only recently recovered from. Coward. Craven. Crow's words struck at the very core of his being and laid the truth there bare. In the end, he had valued his life more than his principles. When he had finally fought, it was out of a desperate desire to live, rather than uphold his principles. Who was to say he wouldn't break them again? He was afraid. He didn't want to fail. Not again. Never again. Didn't want to lose any more of himself to the harsh realities of war. He was many things, but a coward? No. Never. Never again. Naruto didn't realize he'd been had until it was too late. By then he no longer cared. He'd made his choice long ago already. Perhaps, had he realized earlier just how badly Crow was playing him like a fiddle, he would have reconsidered. In time, he'd come to thank the drunken old bird for his challenge. But now, well, at the moment, he was seething. All right. The words burst out of him in a roar as he flung his hands up to the sky. I'm afraid. There. I said it. Happy now? A hysteric laugh bubbled out of him, and he clutched at his face in a rare lapse of control and self-loathing. I'm absolutely terrified. Maidens, grim, semblances, or I don't know anything about any of this. In his peripherals, Glinda shifted half a step forward and he slammed his right foot down, crashing the chair to pieces behind him. I just survived a war, and by the sound of it, you're ready to throw me into another one. I'm sure Crow didn't mean. Ozpin opened his mouth to retort, and Naruto snarled him into silence. No! He spat at him. You don't get to talk. None of you do. Do you hear me? In the same motion, he jerked a thumb over his shoulder towards a now startled Amber. None of you were there to fight for her. None of you. I was. You weren't. Call me whatever you want, but I'm no coward. I'll help you, damn it, but not because of you two and your damn guilt trip. He jabbed a finger at a startled Ozpin and Glinda alike. Because I choose to. Because it's the right thing to do, and as for you, bird boy. Temper running hot, he thrust that same trembling finger at Crow himself. You'd better shut your mouth before I shut it for you, because this damn girl's the bravest one here. Thump. Something warm and soft pressed into Naruto's back before he could finish his rant, momentarily giving the young warrior pause. It took him a handful of seconds to realize it was Amber, another to hear her sniffling. She had rushed him from behind and all but wrapped her arms around his chest with terrible intensity, as though she were afraid he might turn to smoke at any given moment. Even in his frenzied state, it didn't take him long to put two and two together. She was crying, at first for reasons he didn't understand. His spine went rigid, more so when he realized he was the cause of her distress. By then his blood was well and truly up again. Try as he might, he couldn't think of anything to say. Say what you would about Amber, but the girl had a grip on him. Then she started laughing and all sense went flying out the window like a raisin shuriken. What the hell, he muttered, awkwardly reaching around to pat her head. I was complimenting you, you know. Why were you crying? Much to his chagrin, the fall maiden only whimpered into his back. Because I'm happy, you dolt. She sniffled again. No one's ever talked about me like that before, like a person. When the epiphany struck Naruto, it hit like a thunderclap. He'd stood up for her, a simple act of common courtesy from one human being to the other, and here she was acting like he'd given her the bloody holy grail. Did it have something to do with her maiden status? Had she been treated like a weapon all this time? Or had she simply been unable to connect to others? Was she even allowed to have any friends to begin with? All of the above? He wasn't able to make the distinction, and it alarmed him more than words ever could. Unfortunately, before he could act on said realization, someone had to speak. Well, you certainly seem confident in your skills. Ozpin interjected awkwardly into the ensuing silence. Perhaps a demonstration is in order? Naruto's brow shot straight up to his hairline. What? No. I didn't mean I wanted to fight you. You'd get hurt. Crow beckoned in challenge, fingers twitching. Who, me? Not bloody likely. Geez, Naruto twitched. Do you want to fight me that badly? Wouldn't be much of a fight. The old crow retorted. Naruto absolutely twitched this time. Alright, that does it. Something about Crow's words rather, the offhand manner in which the veteran had spoken sent a knife of anger lancing through Naruto's head, though he knew not why. He couldn't stand being mocked or belittled by anyone even now, after all he'd been through. Least of all by a stranger who swooped in only after the fighting was done. But there was something more to this. He just couldn't put his finger on it. Crow's offhand comment might have reminded him of a certain Uchiha. Perhaps he simply didn't like his tone. Maybe he was secretly spoiling for a fight? Who could say? And his temper? That was feeling just a touch raw at the moment. Glinda groaned into a palm. Boys. Take it outside. What had she said to them just now? Outside? That sounded like an excellent idea right about now. Fine. You and me, bub. He jabbed the huntsman's chest. Courtyard. 5 minutes. Need your girlfriend to carry you? Crow shot back with a smirk. Amber made a noise between a whine and a groan. Uncle Crew. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Naruto absolutely hissed at him. You'll eat those words. Into the fray. Everything burned. Her skin, her muscles, even her very bones, every single cell of Cinder's body was united in complete agony. She'd known pain before. She was no stranger to it. One might even call it an old friend. But this couldn't. She couldn't win against it. She felt like a little girl all over again. She wanted to cry. She did. Even the merest act of breathing made her want to die. Coughing threatened to scorch her already searing lungs to ash like so much dust, reducing each breath to little more than a ragged gasp. It was all she could do just to stay conscious. If she passed out now, she wasn't certain she'd wake up. Ultimately, it was this fear that kept her awake. Her fear of being weak, her fear of being powerless, her fear of dying here, utterly alone. Distantly, she became aware of a cool cloth on her forehead, of someone speaking to her. Emerald? Mercury? She couldn't be sure. Why couldn't she see them? Where was everyone? All the world was a blur, but halved somehow. What was wrong with her eye? Someone was holding her now, pushing her upright. She knew it if only because the pain her back became so much worse. Someone pressed a bottle of water to her lips and she drank greedily, great, gasping gulps. So thirsty, her mouth felt drier than the whole of Vacuo right now. Inder? It made the pain worse. So much worse. Still she drank her fill and more. Well, she's alive. Ah. That was certainly Mercury's voice. That's a plus, I guess? Cinder scowled. At least, she thought she did. Then she swung what she hoped was her arm upward to smack him. Judging by his startled grunt and thud that followed, she'd more than succeeded. A small, spiteful sort of satisfaction swelled up inside her heart. Ha! That would teach him to mock her. Yup. Definitely alive. Came the accompanying groan. Damn, even cooked alive she's got more spirit than you, Em. A faint moan answered her. Hate you. Hate you so much right now. Oh. The girl was alive. That was good, she supposed. Where, oh gods, her voice. Her hand flew to her throat. Wait. Hand? Now, boss, just calm down. Mercury croaked. You were in a bad way. Cinder bolted upright, burned skin screaming at her even as her voice faltered. Rage swallowed the pain for a moment, and just a moment, she could stand. She could move, she could see. She almost wished she couldn't for what followed. Mercury had dragged her and Emerald to a cave, dark and dank, only faintly illuminated by the rising light of dawn. That was good at least. They were hidden away from prying eyes. Was then an airship she heard in the distance? She spared a glance for her pawn and found her was a bruised mess, one of her eyes swollen shut. Mercury wasn't much better off. Cinder didn't care. She was more concerned about herself. Her weak legs carried her 3 steps, fear hammering in her heart, before they finally buckled. Then the pain seized her again, and she collapsed to the floor once more. Somehow she dragged herself to the nearest puddle. She shrieked at what she found there. Incredulous, her lone eye gazed back at the severed stump of her right arm, ending well above her shoulder. And her eye? Frantically she pawed at the left side of her face, only to find charred skin greeting her grasp. She didn't want to look. Didn't want to see. But the puddle told all her hair wasn't much better. Mercury had cut her ruined locks boyishly short while she slept, but at least that could at least grow back. Her body was another matter. She was ruined. Her face was scarred, and judging by the pain, her body was in a similar state beneath her dress. Her voice might yet return, but what of the rest of her? She was ruined. Ruined. Salem would be furious. Her lone eye shed a single tear of despair. This was a bad dream. Surely it must be. It wasn't supposed to be this way. No, she mumbled, words tumbling to her lips as she clutched at her face. No, no, no. She lay there for what felt like an eternity. And as she lay there, her mind began to think. To rage. To plan. That girl Amber had done this to her. Unleashed all her fury upon her, all her rage, all her hate. Such was the might of the Fall Maiden. She wanted that power. Needed it, didn't she? Her mind flashed back to the final moments of her battle. Hadn't she seen a power greater than that? Yes. The boy. He'd all but dismantled her plans, batted poor Emerald about like a chew toy and laid Mercury out with a single punch. He turned into a monster suspiciously like a Grim, but brighter. Larger. More powerful, strong enough to split the sky. If not for Mercury, they'd be dead. And Emerald, well. That warrior had been able to resist her illusions. He'd likely seen their faces. That made him even more of a threat. Threats must be eliminated. But that power. It eclipsed that of a maiden. She couldn't stand against it. Force meant nothing in the face of that power. Perhaps not even the power of a maiden. Unless. Cinder sat up so sharply that her cohorts jumped. Of course! She cried. Ma'am? Boss? Cinder waved them down and collapsed shortly thereafter with a satisfied smile. Suddenly the sweet allure of sleep didn't seem quite so deathly. She wouldn't die now. She refused to. For she had a plan. She would need time to recover, of course, weeks, perhaps even months to heal. But once she did well, the heat would have died down by then, and that whiskered warrior wouldn't recognize her now. She barely recognized herself. All the better. A bit of a disguise, keep her hair short, cover up her scarsish rather like the sound of this idea. It distracted her from the pain. She was beaten, perhaps. But not broken. No. Not yet. Not by a long shot. Cinder smiled softly to herself. And so her darkest scheme was born. The strong survived. The weak perished. This wasn't over. She would have her revenge. A tiny demented try deluded, giggle burst from her lips. And if that baffling blonde kissed her hand by the end of it, all the better. Amber had feelings regarding what was about to transpire. On a certain level, the Fall Maiden was looking forward to the match, if only because a small part of she desperately wanted to see Crow get his feathers ruffled. Just a touch. Just a bit. Alright, a lot. She hoped that Loud got himself a big fat black eye for everything he'd said. After all, he and Ozpin had poked and prodded Naruto into an agreement against his will back in the headmaster's office. Now, while she was happy that her precious ally and dare she hope for more, would be staying in this world for the time being, she did not like they'd attempted to manipulate her companion. It smacked of deception, and if there was one thing she despised, it was being deceived. On the other hand, Amber was a gentle girl. Even as the Fall Maiden, she did not enjoy hurting others. Hurry up, slowpoke. Naruto's irritated voice called across the yard. Alright, geez. You're a noisy brat, you know that? A tiny, traitorous smile seized at Amber's lips. Well, not unless they deserved it. At first she'd wanted to believe that this bout would be harmless for the most part. Surely neither Naruto nor Crow were truly so angry with one another as to mangle the other. Not when the former simply seemed wound up by the latter and was looking to vent his anger. Surely once the schoolyard scuffle was over they would let bygones be bygones. Then Naruto spat something less than flattering and Crow squawked back a response that turned her cheeks scarlet. Never mind. These two were going to maim one another. She could see it in Naruto's posture. When he stepped out into the sunlight he was half a pace faster than Crow, and thus she caught his eye first. There was something there in those blazing blue eyes. Not a hunger per se, but a need to prove himself regardless. Crow's words might have struck a touch too close to home for his liking. Whatever the case, she suspected her teacher would find himself in for something of a rude awakening in a moment. Then he decided to nearly stumble into a fountain and her attention went elsewhere. Hey Oz! The drunken lout called out. We gonna start this shindig or what? Except it sounded more like gibberish. Thankfully Amber spoke fluent Crow and translated as much, momentarily. Much to her chagrin, Ozpin seemed intent on prolonging the inevitable, for reasons Amber didn't understand. At least they had Glinda on hand to repair any damage inflicted on their surroundings. By all rights, Miss Goodwich's mere presence negated any potential problems that might arise from this bout. Amber had never met a more capable huntress in her life. Surely she'd keep things from getting out of hand. And if events did escalate, Ozpin himself was nearby to put a stop to it. She'd seen the headmaster fight before. At the very least, he would be able to stop Crow from getting too out of hand. Nervous, are we? Speak of the devil, a little. She confessed as the headmaster himself stepped to her side. It's funny, I'm not even the one fighting, but I don't want them to get hurt too badly. And yet here you are, cheering that young man on. Ozpin pointed out with a bemused glance at her arm. You seem rather taken with him. Because she was, for the first time in her life, someone had done something for her out of the goodness of their heart. Not for political power, not because she was the Fall Maiden, not because of her power, or even her semblance. They'd done it solely out of kindness. Naruto treated her like a normal girl, not some precious piece of porcelain to be locked away from the world. She wanted him to be her partner more than anything. She'd resigned herself to the idea of being an independent huntress for so long, assuming they allowed her to be a proper one at all, that this new hope threatened to give her wings. There was nothing more precious to her than this tiny flame, which was precisely why she wanted him to kick Crow in the... Ozpin chuckled and Amber's face turned the color of an autumn leaf as she realized she'd subconsciously pumped her fist into the air. Gripping her wrist, she pulled her traitorous limb down and turned aside. Ozpin's gaze followed her like a proud papa hawk, not judging her, just silently amused by her reaction. Oddly enough, his laughter actually angered Amber, if only because it reminded her of his own machinations and the farce that she'd borne witness to. She knew Ozpin had a reason for everything he did, that he did it for the good of mankind, that he sometimes lied, and that it wasn't out of any animosity or spite. It didn't make her any less furious with him. Ozpin. She spoke slowly. May I have a word with you? Isn't that what we're doing now? When he saw her expression, something hardened in his gaze. Very well then. Gentlemen? A moment if you would. Naruto snapped off a lazy wave and claimed a perch for himself. Crow muttered something less than pleasant that was soon drowned out behind another flask. Gods, where did he keep those things? Mildly relieved by the reprieve, Amber drew him aside and sure enough, Miss Goodwich followed thereafter. She led them away and around a corner, hoping the distance would be enough. He saved me. She laid the truth out for them both in simple terms. Ozpin blinked at her, baffled by her odd statement. Pardon? Naruto. Saved. Me. Amber rounded on him, growled the words so slowly, so softly that she believed no one else could hear them. You know that. I told you that, countless times, while he slept. She didn't see Naruto's ears twitch in the distance. No, her attention, the smoldering cinders of her all-too-present fury, was firmly fixed on the man before her. He threw himself into a fight when he was already half dead without even asking my name. And how did you repay him? You tried to make him feel guilty for wanting to go back home. Home? After all he's been through? Ozpin, how could you? His shoulders slumped in what she thought might have been contrition. I see. He sighed. I've made something of a mistake, haven't I? He did what he thought best. Glinda stepped in to defend him. Of course she did. She always took his side whenever they argued. I'm sure it wasn't his intention. No! Amber snapped her fingers flecked with the barest hint of flame. You don't get to talk about this, Glinda. You didn't even try to stop Crow. Those ice blue eyes narrowed. Watch your tone, young lady, the same way you watched yours? She shot back. Glinda. Enough. Miss Autumn is in the right. What? In the face of her damning accusation, Ozpin surprised them both. His admission caused both Amber and Glinda alike to glance back at him. Still, the Fall Maiden bristled in disbelief. She hadn't expected him to actually accept his guilt wholeheartedly, much less lay a hand on her shoulder. I understand your frustrations, he continued, staring down into her blazing eyes with a resigned expression. Rest assured, that was not my intent. Not your intent? Amber ground her teeth, a rare spark lightning heating her gaze as her anger continued to press down on the lot of them. Then tell me, Ozpin, what is your intent? She edged half a step forward, face set in stone. Because the two of you let Crow run roughshod all over Naruto until he finally pushed back. What purpose did that serve? What else are you keeping from me? Is there a reason I saw those Atlas ships in our airspace this morning? Did you summon Ironwood here too? Why not Winter while you're at it? Bring the whole bloody military down on our heads. She'd said it in spite. Sarcasm. The pair exchanged a reluctant glance. Amber recoiled in quiet horror. Ozpin. You didn't. Glinda realized what was about to happen a second before it transpired. Amber. With that, the girl's semblance finally slipped its leash and crashed down on the lot of them like a wet blanket. It began as an unseen tingle down the base of the aspiring huntress's spine, one that wriggled out of her grasp even as she frantically fought to rein it in. Aghast, she tried to reel her emotions back on the line, fearing it was too late. Much to her disbelief, Amber found herself able to do so for the first time in her life. Terror seized her, accompanied by a strange, weightless euphoria. There wasn't any pain. Her semblance had always been a rogue one, flaring up whenever she was agitated or depressed. She'd never been able to control it reliably. Until now. Now, when she was seething with righteous anger, did she find herself in control. There was just one problem. She didn't want to master her semblance. She wanted to use it. Here. Now. Throw it right at them. She was well and truly furious now, and she didn't want to calm down. In a fit of pique, the young Fall Maiden raised her head and her eyes all but pulsed. Ozpin flinched as several metric tons of gravity came crashing down on his shoulders, but otherwise remained relatively unharmed. He must have raised his aura as a precautionary measure, to which Amber found herself suddenly and immensely grateful he had. Oh gods! She'd lost herself. She could have hurt him. At least he was all right. The same could not be said of the ground. It splintered like brittle glass and shame colored her features even as she saw the destruction she'd created. Just like that her semblance slipped away from her again, leaving her reeling and feeling lethargic. Ugh, she'd forgotten about the headaches. I'm sorry, she groaned, rubbing her forehead. I didn't mean to. Quite all right. Ozpin soothed. You had good reason to be angry with me. Please try to understand. Glinda interjected before the situation could escalate further. You'd just been attacked by unknown forces. We thought the city was in danger, and we didn't call James. She paused to let the words sink in, watching the girl's eyes widen. He came of his own volition. By the time we realized he was here, it was already too late. Contrary to popular belief, I didn't ask James to park his fleet on our doorstep. Ozpin groused in a rare lapse of character. That was his own doing. Where the devil is he, then? Her anger sparked back to life immediately. Where's he hiding? Somewhere on the border, I'd assumed. Amber swatted his wrist. Ozpin, I've given him the detailed description of the perpetrators you and Naruto supplied. The headmaster put in reluctantly, massaging his arm. He wouldn't leave without word of the situation, so I thought to distance him from said situation. Distract him from the boy. Throw him a bone, if you would. If those three show their faces again, we'll find the man he needn't know about our guest in the meantime. They have enough weapons without learning of his gifts. Is that what you think of him? She challenged. A weapon? Like me? An epiphany dawned and Amber's hands flew to her mouth. Is that what this is all about? You didn't want him to see Naruto? A reasonable assumption, but not quite. Ozpin demurred with a light tap of his cane. I'd rather he acclimate to our world without the scientists of Atlas looking over his shoulder just yet. Now more than ever, given what we've seen of his abilities, he has every right to be treated normally. His gaze softened as it settled on her once more. Just as you do, Amber winced, recalling just how spectacular said abilities had proven to be, but she hadn't led a normal life. She'd held these powers for as long as she could remember. Why did Ozpin have to baffle her so? There were times when she thought he was nothing but a liar, and then he did this. A beat of awkward silence pushed itself between teacher and student. Finally, the former released the last of her anger, and exhaled in an petulant huff. Ozpin, I am going to ask you this once. With a supreme effort of will, Amber mastered the raging swirl of her own emotions and shook off her mentor's attempted deflection. When next she spoke, her tone reminded Oz of someone he would much rather forget. Do you have a way to send Naruto home or not? Because if you do, if you lied to him just to further your own goals, so help me, I did not. Ozpin's reply was instant, the truth spoken without even a moment's hesitation. Believe me, if I did, we would have returned him to his world by now. From the terrible tale your friend has told, it sounds as if his home is in dire need of assistance. Were it within my power to do so, I would. You have my word, all right. I believe you. Did she really? But he deserves to know the truth. All of it. Everything you've told me. She folded both arms before her bosom. Gods know he's fought hard enough. Ozpin actually hesitated at that remark, considering her words. Then he straightened. Very well. It may burden him, however. You are aware of this? Amber took her lip between her teeth and worried it nervously. Would he still look at her the same afterward? No. Bad Amber. Bad. Focus. He deserved the truth. Eyes. I'd like him to know. He should. Miss Goodwitch planted a hand on her hip. You think that highly of his abilities? Hysterical laughter threatened to burst out of Amber's lips. Think highly of him? Of course she did. She'd seen Naruto turn into a giant fox. He'd beaten that girl about as if she were a chew toy and crushed her underfoot, to say nothing of his other feats. If he hadn't healed her, hadn't saved her life, if she hadn't seen his sunny personality firsthand, she would have been terrified. When faced with a power like that, you could either deny it and sink into delusion, or accept reality. There was always someone better than you. Stronger. Faster. Amber had seen it firsthand. She could have told them any number of things. She chose not to. Let them gape and gawk when they realized the truth. Smiling to herself, the Fall Maiden preened vindicatively. I do. You'll just have to see for yourself. Shall we then? Ozpin offered. I believe we've kept the boys waiting long enough. Thud. A distant crash caused the unlikely trio to jump. Cheap shot, brat. Crow's voice snarled harshly. You started it, old man. Came the cry. I ain't that old. Right, then. Ozpin muttered eloquently. Time to go. Amber told herself she wasn't nervous. Not really. But as the three of them slunk back into the plaza, her heart began to race. Naruto and Crow hadn't wasted their time alone. The latter was peeling himself off the street as they came into view, and Naruto's fist was still extended, suggesting he'd been the one to throw the first punch while they were away. He looked almost satisfied. It was a good look for him. Amber watched him draw his arm back, and a tiny little thrill shot through her when he saw her and sauntered over with a wave. She moved to meet him. You done with your little secret society business? He asked pointedly. And Jewess like that, her anxiety ratcheted itself up 10 notches. How much of that did you hear? He was blushing. Sure enough, the blonde's expression proved telling as he scratched a whiskered cheek. Almost of it? I've got good ears. Is that your semblance? Told ya, he frowned. I don't have one of those. Oh. Right. She'd forgotten. And all but made a fool of herself. Amber wilted inward on herself. Blast it all, he had heard everything, hadn't he? Right. Okay. She could still salvage this. She just had to tell him the truth. Well, the rest of it. Naruto already knew about her powers. She told him as much earlier, but he didn't understand their purpose or what a maiden was, nor what they guarded. She was little more than a human weapon. A key to a door. He was looking at her now, likely waiting for her to admit the truth. Something quailed in her chest. So what if he never looked at her the same way again? She owed him the truth, if nothing else. Even if it hurt. Even if it ruined everything. No. She shook herself. Stop it, be strong. Just come out and tell him, hey. It's not your fault, you know. Amber jumped upright and clutched her hands to her chest as if she'd been slapped. Excuse me? Naruto's face twitched with a petulant expression. Seems like you've got a lot on your plate with those powers and all. I know how that feels. I'm so sorry for wait. The Fall Maiden perked up at his unusual choice of words, the tiniest firefly of hope flickering back to life in her guarded chest. What? You do? Ha! Course I do. The whiskered warrior briefly threw his head back with a wistful laugh, as though he were experiencing a fond memory. I've had people chasing after me for as long as I can remember. If it makes you feel any better, I was in the same boat you're in now. Something in his voice softened, those gentle blue eyes crinkling as they narrowed upon her. Look, I've been told I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed when it comes to this kind of thing, but if you need someone to talk to, I can help. I've been there, you know? Her heart cracked. Soul of this secrecy, was it all in vain then? Naruto tilted his head, dumbfounded. No, never. I met you, didn't I? That makes any secret worth it. Tears welled up in Amber's eyes, the dam threatening to burst despite her best attempts to plug the holes Naruto's words had torn in her defenses. He understood. Someone understood her. For the first time in her life, she'd met someone her age who knew the weight of her burden, one who offered to help her shoulder it, not out of greed, or want of power, but simple empathy for another human being. It was almost too much for her to bear. No, it was. Still, she stubbornly clung on a moment more out of sheer pride, taking her lip between her teeth as she began to tremble. Her emotions, tamped down until this moment, came bubbling back up. You can't just say something like that, the young man blinked back at her. But we're friends, aren't we? Those words knocked another brick out of the crumbling wall of Amber's resistance. You know, Naruto remarked, utterly unaware of her raging feelings, I can't count the number of times those goons from Akatsuki tried to rip Kurama out of me. Now it was Amber's turn to blink up at him. Kurama? Blue eyes twinkled. He's swell, I guess you could call him a partner of mine. You should meet him sometime. I think likes you. Likes you. Amber felt her cheeks turn pink as her brain rebooted itself. Right. She shook herself quickly. Partner. She needed to ask him before someone else. Partners? By the seasons, she'd said aloud without realizing it. Is that a thing in this world? Sure. His head bobbed and her world went absolutely scarlet. I'd love to work with you. Wouldn't want those jerks to come after you again, right? Well, that was easier than she'd expected. As a huntsman? Amber dared to prod him further, despite her own silent fears. I know it's not something you said you wanted to do, but it's like being a shinobi, right? His eyes narrowed when she dared a nod. I could do that if it's with you. How hard can it be? Ah, Naruto. You know not what you hath wrought. Ihihei. Steam burst from Amber's ears. She couldn't speak. Words failed her. No, wait, she could think a few right about now. Yes, yees. I knew you were the one. Critical failure. Meltdown imminent. Try as she might, Amber couldn't hold on anymore. It was like trying to hold melting ice between superheated fingers. Nope. Not possible. Any hope of restraint flew out of the window. Really, it was all his fault this happened. Naruto could only squawk in surprise as the maiden blitzed him with a delighted cry, flinging both arms around his neck. If it were a simple hug, he could have mastered himself, but then head crushed against his collarbone, causing his arms to instinctively close around her waist for balance. Of course her legs took that cue to leap up, not giving a fig who saw. Momentum caught up to them a heartbeat later and drove the two of them into the ground and tore a great fro in the street, a flying tackle from a tearful maiden riding an emotional high. Ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing more destructive in all the world of Remnant. Naruto never stood a chance. Ah, young love? Ozpin took another lingering sip of his coffee. Isn't it wonderful, Glinda? Anya left. His fellow teacher warned dutifully. Amber took that moment to lob a fireball over her shoulder at the surly professor, one that found itself harmlessly batted aside by his cane. Only then did she realize the compromising position she'd fallen into. Well, Naruto was certainly a part of it, but still. By the seasons, she was straddling him with her hips, the fingers of her right hand locked firmly within his, forehead pressed against his own. His certainly looked about red as she felt, because she'd nearly kissed. Oh no. Her emotions had gotten the better of her again. Oh. Amber jerked back and away as if she'd been burned. Words failed her, her head snapping left and right, hair whirling. Ayumel. Hey, runt! Crow catcalled. Stop flirting and let go of him already. I still need to kick his ass, Amber wanted to scream at her mentor. Uncle Crow. Seriously? Naruto frowned. Oh right, forgot about the bird brain, brat. Came the immediate retort. Drunken lout. Just like that the boys were back to circling one another in slow predatory strides, taking the measure of the other like two Beowulf. Oh gods, making them wait had made things worse. Crow could fight. She knew that much. But she'd seen firsthand what Naruto was capable of, witnessed the eldritch powers he commanded. He'd fired a blast that split the clouds in twain. They'd likely had energy readings all the way in Atlas. Now that Naruto had been given a chance to sleep away his fatigue well, someone was going to have a bad time. Sure enough, when she looked back, Naruto was smiling and Crowell. Crow still looked right and properly soused. Nothing out of the ordinary, as usual. Susu? The huntsman drawled into the calm with only the slightest slur. How you want to play this, kid? Quickly. Naruto's grin turned decidedly predatory as he crossed both arms before his chest. Hit me with your best shot, old man. Don't hold anything back. Have it your way. As Amber looked on, her mentor rolled his slim shoulders in a shrug and slipped a hand behind his back to Harbinger's hilt. Don't come crying to me when you're covered in bruises, Amber groaned. Ugh, boys. Fight already, will you? Remember, gentlemen. Ozpin's cane tapped the ground twice as he favored each with a stoic look. You may fight as you please, but I'd prefer you not destroy my school. Don't worry, Gramps. The blonde swung out his arm in a lazy wave. I'm not going to drop a tailed beast bomb on anyone's head. All present parties blinked. Tailed what now? You know what? Forget it. Naruto sighed, palming his face. This won't take long. Finally! Crow cried. Something we agree on. Can we start already? I'm getting sober over here. Glinda pinched the brow of her nose and exhaled in a long-suffering sigh, but nevertheless raised her wand as she stepped between the two of them to make ready. Naruto barely spared her a glance as he dropped low to the ground, taking on something of a runner's crouch. Crow staggered back and draped a lazy hand behind to his weapon. Amber couldn't help but wince. Harbinger was a vicious sword, even for a huntsman. full of tricks and surprises. She'd fought against it enough times during training to know. Naruto had no such knowledge. Very well then. A beat of silence followed. Now, Glinda's wand came crashing down. Begin! Naruto didn't hesitate. Those words had only just left her lips when he struck. Crow was only half a heartbeat behind, a ferocious grin tearing across his pale visage. Fast! That was his first thought as the huntsman blitzed him in a blur of gray and silver. He hadn't expected someone, least of all a drunken louse, to accelerate so suddenly, least of all whip out their weapon that fast. It almost surprised him. Almost. Swaying around the second sweep, he pivoted and slammed a vicious elbow into the man's spine, sending him tumbling forward 3 steps into the street. When he rushed him, the man's sword hit the street in an explosive strike, spraying a wave of stones into his face. All right. The huntsman allowed as he straightened his back. I felt that one. Let's see you do it again. Naruto took a stance, gave himself to the flow of battle and let his instincts have sway as his opponent closed the distance between them. As he'd expected, Crow's combat style proved itself elusive as it was rapid, quickly narrowed the gap between them in a flowing flock of blows that battered against his defenses like a great storm of wings. Ever seeking, constantly probing his defenses, rattling his guard for even the most minute of openings, Naruto found one first. Twin fists collided in a shuddering shockwave as their knuckles struck one another head-on, the sudden impact sending the leaves of fall flying away with a sudden wind that blew Amber's hair back from her face. At such close proximity, Glinda was forced to raise her guard against the subsequent gale. Ozpin raised a brow in mild surprise, mildly amused by the display. That brow rose further still when Naruto kicked Harbinger free from his opponent's grasp, causing the two men to abandon their opening moves and grapple instead. The result of that contest proved apparent almost immediately. Within moments Naruto forced Crow backwards. Literally. First 1 step, then 2, 3, inch by determined inch the Jinchuriki frog marched his opponent backward, boots grinding against the pavement with each successive step. Crow's strained snarl was music to his ears, muscles jumping in his forehead as he fought and failed to push him back. Where was all that bravado now? Gone with the wind. Naruto wasn't ordinarily the sort to revel in combat, but there was just something so cathartic about this. Nor was the old bird going anywhere at that. His grip was ironclad. Naruto had half a mind to push the snarky bugger into the fountain. Cool his head off among other things. Aren't we overdoing this a little? Kurama scoffed. You could have knocked him out by now, Naruto growled. Shut up and let me have this, furball. Oh ho? Showing off for Amber are we? Naruto's face turned rosy. That's not. No. I understand, partner. Truly I do. Much to his dismay, the fox took his words and ran with them, snickering all the while. She's a young woman, one who just tackled and straddled you. You're at that age now, hormones and all. Not to mention you're an impressionable young man easily swayed by the fairer sex. And she is quite fair. Can we not have this conversation now? I'm trying to fight here for crying out loud. A boot slammed into his groin and both Fox and Shinobi snarled as one. Bastard, / bring me his head. Well. Crow drawled with a smile as the blonde doubled over with a hiss. A hand seized the blonde's hair and dragged his head up. Looks like you can take a hit. Color me surprised. He wasn't prepared for the grin. Naruto exploded into motion. There was no other word for it. One moment Branwen thought the battle won, the next he found the kid suddenly sprouted a staff from nowhere. A staff that sent Crow spinning into the street with a dislocated shoulder and a bruised collarbone to boot. A boot stomped after his head and the stone shattered underfoot beneath its force when he rolled out of the way. Crow popped the limb back in and twisted to slam a kick against the blonde's side, only to find himself caught and flung away like the very leaves they had only just scattered moments before. Once again he caught himself, but remarkably, the blonde didn't pursue. Instead, he leveled that strange ringed staff at him. You realize, of course, that this means war. Not gonna use those copies of yours? Came the taunting retort. Worked like a charm. Naruto twitched. No. I don't need a shadow clone to kick your ass. After a moment's consideration, he banished his weapon to boot. I don't even need this. Crow knelt to retrieve his blade. Fair enough. Game on. They collided with a roar and began raging back and forth across the plaza in a mad waltz of drunken proportions, their movements near invisible to the naked eye. Finally, when Crow swung high, Naruto went low. The faintest breeze brushed the back of his head as he tucked in once again and pivoted on his heel. It would have been so easy to smash a Rasengan into his stomach. He chose not to. Instead, the faintest golden shimmer coasted his fist as he struck back. Not at full strength, of course. He didn't want to pop the poor man's head off, no matter how much he might dislike him. Just a good punch to the face, he decided. Knock him out, end this quickly, and get back to business. Imagine his surprise then, when Crow took it right on his chin and twisted with the force of the blow to bring the blunt end of his blade crashing down on his head. His skull rang like a bell and snapped down. It didn't so much sting as it did startle him. There was not a hint of malice behind the blow. Right. That tore it then, no more holding back. If the bastard wanted to fight dirty? He'd get dirty, all right. Point to you's what I would say if he'd actually hurt me. His body burst into a plume of smoke and too late, Crow realized he'd been had. You say aura can protect you from most attacks? A voice hissed in his ear. Good to know. Then you shouldn't feel this at all. Crow's eyes should have saved him. Indeed, the faintest flicker of motion in his peripherals gave the huntsman more than ample warning. It wasn't enough. No. Not nearly enough. For all his skill, he simply lacked the speed to react in time. By the time he'd thought to turn, even as he began to move, he'd inadvertently sealed his fate. His opponent had already moved to his flank, snapped into existence behind him. Body held low to the ground, boots dug in, fingers clenched in an unfamiliar shape. Then those very fingers shot up at a vicious angle with sound and aplomb to strike his. Herc! Naruto's voice cried out in vicious vengeance as Crow shot into the air like a rocket. 1,000 years of death. The women present turned 7 shades of scarlet as the poor huntsman sailed into the air. Ozpin merely raised his mug to his lips and drank in quiet appreciation. As for Crow, he felt every bit of it. He was not amused. Physically the man was still mostly intact. Mostly. Alas, the same could not be said of Crow's shattered pride as he crashed into the ground, writhing paroxysms of agony as he clutched his rear end. He thought he'd known pain. It was something of an old friend, one he'd learned to ignore when necessary. He'd been in his share of scrapes before, faced down hordes of Grim, fought his drunken sister, found himself on the receiving end of one Summer Rose's wrath when she once ran out of coffee. The agony he was currently experiencing obliterated any of those. This was hell. The laughter of a certain blonde only served to further exacerbate his torment. Oh dear! Naruto's voice sang out above him. That looked painful. Turnabout is fair play, as they say. Rage, as they say, is a hell of an anesthetic. It had Crow right back on his feet, red as a rose and thrice as furious. You little brat! Harbinger snapped upright in his grasp, gears grinding furiously. When I get through with you, you're gonna be. Why did he smell smoke? A grin greeted him. And bang goes the birdie. Too late. Crow beheld the strange note stuck to the edge of his cape, heard its telltale crackle in all its smoldering glory. Red eyes bulged. He'd been duped. Again. Clever little shit. Naruto laughed. Crow roared. You, bang. When the low-powered flash went off, his aura took the brunt of it, and prevented any real injury on his part. It did not, however, save Crow's vision. Coughing and hacking against the smoke as much as the sudden flashbang, the old bird stumbled free from the black cloud, angrier than he'd ever been. He'd get his sight back soon enough. But gods, that shit burned. It didn't burn as badly as the flying raisin gun that collided with his backside. To its credit, his aura held out. But only just. Now there was pain. Because not only did the spiraling sphere smash Crow face first against the asphalt, it just kept going. Spirits, he wasn't even sure when it stopped. By the time it did, his back was all but shrieking at him, and his aura levels left nearly depleted by pain. A lesser huntsman with a weaker constitution might have thrown in the towel. Not Crow. Didn't mean he was in any hurry to get up after that, though. His mind took the opportunity to assess just how badly his arse was being handed to him. What the hell was going on here? This kid was picking him apart. Oh good. You survived. Was it him, or did the kid sound almost sheepish just now? Sorry about that. I lost my head for a second. Crow punched his good arm into the ground. Loudly, repeatedly. For all his sense and experience, he just couldn't keep up with him like this. Couldn't match him. The brat was faster. Stronger. Not all that brilliant in the realm of strategy when compared to an elite hunter such as himself, but he didn't have to be. His strength and speed more than made up for any lack of tact to win him the day. And the kid was winning, make no mistake. He hadn't been beaten this badly since Summer was pregnant. Just the thought of it sent a shudder shooting down his spine. Sure enough, his vision began to clear as he picked himself, though no further attack came. Damn brat was waiting for him when he got up, arms crossed before his chest. Ready to throw in the towel? Gee, let me think, Abueno. With a wrench of his wrist, Crow swung his blade back and squeezed its trigger. Harbinger responded all too gleefully to his command. Her gears shifted, circuits writhed, then twisted as her sword formed separated by halves. Metal bent inward, plates folding out to bend the blade up and backwards in a ghastly new shape. Another twist and the handle extended, bringing the warped weapon to bear over his shoulder. Within moments, the sword was no more, and for the first time since their impromptu duel had begun, Naruto's face had lost its pleasant smile. Then it bloomed tenfold. Did your sword just turn into a bloody scythe? Surprised? Crow hefted his transformed tool with a flinty flourish. Finally felt like he was in control of the fight again, however brief it might be. Yes, actually. The boy's grin was not all at what he had expected. That's freaking metal. Where can I get something like that? Amber slapped her forehead. What is it with boys and weapons? Crow couldn't help himself. He started laughing. On one hand, he wanted to gut the boy thrice over for catching Amber's eye. Professional pride, really? She wasn't family, but she was his student. On the other, he found himself almost dare he say I'd enjoying this little spat of theirs. Kid knew how to fight if nothing else, and his unique brand of sass had begun to brow on the elder huntsman. He still wanted to break his jaw, of course, but now it didn't feel quite so personal. For better or worse, the whiskered warrior had found his spine and nothing short of a knockout blow was going to stop him now. He could respect that if nothing else. Geez! He sighed, wiping a mirthful tear from his eye. You know what? You're all right. Tell you what. Harbinger swung up onto his shoulder. You beat me, we'll let you build any weapon you want. Even a scythe like mine, if you think you can handle it. Wait, is that a thing here? Naruto tilted his head, enthusiasm waning. Staves and knives are more my speed, Crow shrugged. Pretty sure Glinda wouldn't mind showing you a thing or two. Miss Goodwitch absolutely sputtered at him. I beg your pardon? Judging by Amber's pleased expression, he'd done good. The blonde's expression? Whole other level. Really? Yeah, he grunted, preening. Kid almost reminded him of Ruby with that enthusiasm. I know a guy. I believe that sounds like a wager. Oz called from the sidelines. Shall we make it one? Both men paused long enough to flip him off before facing one another yet again. That thing got a name? Naruto inquired, slipping back into a second stance. Sure does. Crow scoffed. Her name's Harbinger. By the way. Duck. Naruto did just that, body bending near parallel to the ground and staying at that impossible angle as Harbinger swept harmlessly over his head. A few golden hairs fluttered to the ground as his legs scissored up to catch Crow hard in the chest. With his aura nearly depleted and his body overextended, the huntsman had no choice but to weather the blow with Harbinger's hilt. He immediately regretted that decision when the blonde hooked his heel around the handle and swung himself upright to smash through his guard. Crow's ribs creaked ominously, more so as he shot headlong into the air again. Thankfully with his dignity intact this time around, but still. He wasn't about to let the runt get the drop on him again. Screw it. With a thought, he transformed into his avian form, caught a gust of wind, and alighted upon a nearby lamppost out of harm's way. Well? Naruto blinked up at him, and whistled softly at the sight. That's new. Where'd you learn that? It was Ozpin's turn to chuckle. I'm afraid that's something of an acquired skill, the blonde shrugged. Alright then. You coming down or what? Nah. Crow reverted with a smirk. Come get me. He didn't expect the smile. Sure. Blue eyes blazed gold. Too late Crow realized his mistake. Too late did he see Naruto's boots slam against the street in quick succession. Once. Twice. Thrice. He watched the use his legs tense saw the street buckle, as though he'd released some previously unseen weight. He dropped into something of a runner's crouch, and the street buckled further still as he dug his hands in. Crow began to spin Harbinger into a defensive loop before him, but he feared it wouldn't be enough. By the seasons. This was going to hurt. He needed to dodge, or block, at the very least move. Gold orbs dominated his vision, and once more, there was only pain. Crow didn't see the punch connect, didn't see his body fly, didn't see himself skip like a stone across the street, didn't hear himself crash through a building and out the other side. Didn't feel the last of his aura gutter out pitifully, but he certainly felt the wall when it fell on top of him. It took more than a few seconds for him to climb out of his rubble. Sure enough, a stray chunk came down and bashed him in the head. Blasted semblance. Blasted bad luck. It was a miracle he was even conscious at all. Judging by the approaching footsteps, it wouldn't be for long. A shadow fell over him. Groaning, he dared to look up. This was going to hurt, wasn't it? That was Crow's first coherent thought as reality rushed back. Right, I felt that. He grunted. We gonna finish the little shindig or what? Naruto's lips twitched, then spasmed before his own voice finally betrayed him. I'm going to punch you now. He began to crack his knuckles. I don't know when I'll stop. Crow sketched a sloppy bow from where he lay, fingers tight on Harbinger's hilt. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. In a final desperate move he rolled and cut up at him in a silver hue, aiming to finish the fight. Naruto ducked the first, stepped back from the second, deflected the third with a sweep of his boot, even as a fourth rammed at his unprotected midsection. He ducked under the follow-up punch and dropped low to sweep his legs, leaving the opening Crow had been waiting for. A triumphant smile stretched across his visage. In a single bound he vaulted over the blonde's counter, spun his scythe to ward off an aerial attack, and struck down, fully prepared to bring Harbinger howling at his head. Gotcha! And the kid caught his damned scythe. A glowing hand snapped up to interpose itself between Harbinger's curved metal and his face at the last moment, pale fingers casually holding the deadly weapon at bay as one might an annoying twig. Even as he held the blade at bay he stood, dragging the weapon with him. Well shit, he'd not expected that one. No matter how much he struggled or strove, Crow couldn't extricate it from his grasp. He redoubled his efforts, to which Naruto hung his head and blew out an angry breath, a lone sigh misting out into the cold air in a scorching plume of hot steam. Calm down. Something about those words instantly set the huntsman on edge. Who are you talking to? Me? No, the reply was instant, the words carrying a harsh undercurrent to them that hadn't been there before. Not Yukarama. Naruto's head rose and in place of those mild golden eyes, sinister scarlet slits silenced Crow's smile. There was something wrong with those eerie orbs, as though some great beast were looking back at him from within the gaze of a man. He had no way of knowing just how right he was. The abyss stared at him, and Crow gazed back. A grievous grin greeted him, grim and gray. Crow's tugging intensified, but Harbinger still wouldn't so much as budge. He was about to let go of it, fight on with his fists, when a hand seized him by the scruff of his neck and hauled him forward. My turn, Crow gulped. Well shit, that grin turned oddly sunny. Indeed, without so much as a warning, Naruto yanked him in and delivered a vicious headbutt. Crow's world exploded into 1,000 stars. Gah? What kind of skull was this? It felt like he'd hit a bullhead. In the end, he never did get an answer to that unspoken question. Why, you ask? Because he wasn't awake to ask it. Naruto's fist snapped forward like a piston, and Crow flew. The blonde realized his mistake instantly. In his determination to end things, he'd inadvertently sent the man sailing toward Glinda. Hey, watch it! Miss Goodrich merely rolled her eyes and swiped left with her wand, sending the old bird crashing into, and soon through the fountain opposite her with a mighty splash. Said fountain promptly crumbled atop Crow's prone form. He did not rise again. Naruto palmed his face with a groan. He wasn't entirely satisfied with that outcome, but at least the man wouldn't drown in the fountain. Probably. Maybe. Hopefully? Another chunk of stone fell free and struck the huntsman on the head. Naruto winced, the last of his anger guttering out into a quiet pall of pity. Oh, that looked painful, Amber winced. Oz whistled softly. Impressive, most impressive. That was quite the rebuttal. His head turned toward the ruined fountain. Do you have anything to add, Crow? Pringle. Came the verbose reply as the battered man raised a bruised fist and accepted his defeat. He did not get up, quite. Ozpin made of a show of adjusting his glasses. Now that we've concluded that bit of business here, a small card sailed toward Naruto. To his credit, the blonde caught it easily. What's this? Lean. Oz explained. A form of currency for this world. Think of it as a reward. The blonde blinked in mild consternation. I didn't bet anything. Glinda's sour expression proved most telling. No, but I did. That was all the excuse Amber needed to saunter over to them, though there was a smug satisfaction in her eye that somewhat set him on edge and not in a bad way. Her stride was quick and determined, her bright gaze holding his like a laser. In the background, the rest of Ozpin's words dissolved into silent static. Naruto barely heard him. He wasn't entirely sure he liked the look she was giving him at the moment. Nor did she seem to be in any hurry to reach him. Torn somewhere between fight or flight, he nevertheless stood his ground as she approached. Sure enough, Kurama creaked an eye open again. You really know how to pick 'em, don't you? Look at those hips, Naruto swore. Don't say anything else. I swear by all that is holy, if you say anything. When she finally reached him, the first thing she did was take hold of his tattered shirt and tear it right off his shoulders. Shinobi and tailed him blinked, utterly aghast. How quickly the turns tabled. Our body isn't ready. Kurama wailed. Our body? Naruto nearly squawked. Good job. The fall maiden said, heedless of their confusion. You really cleaned his clock. Ruined your shirt, though. See, was it? Naruto answered eloquently. Only then did he dare to glance at the ruined scrap of fabric in her grasp. Calling it a scrap would be generous at this point. It was little more than a rag by now, one filled with holes. Thankfully his pants had at least held out better than his shirt. But did she have to tear it off? Did she even realize her actions? Amber must have, because her dark face began to burn immediately thereafter. It started as a slow flush building at the base of her neck and spread like wildfire, consuming her entire face in an instant. He was fairly certain his own face stood a similar shade of scarlet. Well. She sputtered and flung his ruined shirt back at him. I mean, we're getting you a new outfit. Effective immediately. I'll have Miss Goodrich fetch something for him in the meantime. Ozpin put in genially. Perhaps a spare uniform? Uniform? Nobody said anything about that. Naruto's face turned ashen, but he bit his tongue. Glinda exhaled in a put-upon sigh and stalked away to do just that. I'm sure she'll find something in your size. Naruto tried to put on a smile and to quail at Amber's earlier words. Shopping for clothes was in a word, hell. Didn't matter if you were doing it for yourself or someone else. Why, just the thought of it made him shake like a leaf. His feet twitched treacherously beneath him, wanting to bolt. No! Bad legs. Stay put. But they couldn't, and he found himself starting to pace in place. He loathed shopping. Sakura had tried it once. Still, the thought of doing it with Amber didn't seem so bad by comparison as she continued to fret and fuss over him. From what he'd seen of her so far, she wasn't like to force an outfit on him that he disliked or drag him on for endless hours cooing about shoes, even if she kept stealing glances at his chest. That spurred an odd feeling in him, one he couldn't quite pin down. Amber was nice, he supposed. He felt comfortable in her presence. Kurama's laughter made it worse. Bastard knew something he didn't, but what? Then a gigantic, hulking, metal bird swooped into the yard and he forgot all thoughts of shopping. The hell is that thing? Naruto couldn't think of any other word for that abomination, but he certainly knew how to react. By yelling. Loudly. Profusely. Monster. Beast. Behemoth. The sight of it made him summon up his cloak without thinking, body snapping back into vivid shades of gold and black. Probably for the best, given the state of his attire. not so given the situation. I take it you've never seen a bullhead before. Amber put in coyly. How and in what way does that resemble a bull? Kurama roared inside his head. Libel. Slander. Lies and falsehoods, Ozpin. Amber growled the word through a tight smile that looked entirely too sweet to be real. I thought you said Ironwood wasn't here. The headmaster face-bound. He wasn't. Blast it all, this was precisely the sort of scenario that he'd hoped to avoid. Too late, he realized Naruto was still glowing like a beacon for lack of a better word. I don't suppose you can turn back time? He received a firm shake of the head for his efforts. No? Of course not. Thankfully Glinda chose that moment to return with fresh clothes, and not a second too soon at that. Ozpin all but blurred as he snatched them from her. Not a heartbeat later they landed in Naruto's waiting arms. To his credit, the boy was already moving them before he spoke again. Say what you would, but the boy was a blur. Amber only squeaked once as his trousers flew over her head. Thankfully Miss Goodrich was quick to flick it away right at Crow's face. Poor man, he still hadn't gotten out of the fountain. Naruto must have really knocked him for a loop. Quickly now, he instructed as Naruto struggled valiantly with the jacket. Stop glowing and put these on. We can't afford to draw any more attention to you, unless you'd rather be taken away. Glinda put in teasingly. I hear Atlas is lovely this time of year. Amber swatted her elbow as Naruto's head popped out of the shirt with a groan. Seriously? In the end, luck was with them, for the young man finished just in time. As Naruto looked on in quiet trepidation, a smartly dressed man with dark hair and keen eyes descended the ramp, flanked by a pair of what he assumed to be soldiers. He felt tense. Even with his cloak still active and his superior sensing abilities, he couldn't quite get a read on the man. The woman behind him was a different matter. Only a half step behind him came a young lady officer, with bright, piercing eyes and drawn hair the color of snow. For all that, she was young. Near his own age, yet she felt rigid, her emotions bubbling beneath a thin veneer of frosty formality. Naruto wasn't sure if that was a good thing. Still, with hair like that, she probably had a name to match. He wasn't far off the mark. That will be all, Winter. At ease, a sharp if somewhat uncertain salute greeted him. Yes, sir. Then the well-dressed man turned a glance their way. Is that him? Naruto flicked a tortured look toward Ozpin, and surprisingly, the headmaster stepped in to intercept Ironwood with a firm embrace. James. You're early. What can I say? The newcomer smiled as they parted. I wanted to see our new friend for myself, and I wasn't disappointed. Ozpin's smile turned a touch brittle. I see. I wasn't aware you were watching, old friend. Amber went terribly still. See for himself? Wasn't disappointed? That implied he had been watching them. With everyone so focused on the raging bout below, they'd failed to notice the bullhead circling higher above. With Atlas technology, it wasn't far-fetched to guess what Ironwood had seen or how he'd seen it. Naruto and Crow hadn't exactly been subtle towards the end there. Her mouth twitched. No. Not subtle at all. Still, at least Ironwood was distracted for the time being as Ozpin continued to field his questions. She exhaled softly, one crisis averted for now at least. Not so his second in command. Why, you ask? Because she was making a beeline right for them. Amber buried her head into Naruto's shoulder with a tiny groan. Oh no. What? What's wrong? Are they bad guys? Came the whisper. They certainly don't feel like it. No, she hissed back frantically, eyes flitting to his when he didn't react. Good guys. That's the problem, eh? Before Naruto had a chance to ask what the devil she meant, much less voice his concerns, Winter was well and truly upon them. Her gaze swept over the pair and alighted upon Crow, still draped across the fountain like some broken statue. Her pale brow rose marginally. Was that the ghost of a smile on her lips just now? No, surely not. Amber didn't like the queasy feeling it gave her. It felt like an angry flame burning in her chest, even more so when those icy orbs settled upon Naruto. Impressive. The specialist's hum was cool, almost frigid to her ears. You knocked Crow down a peg. Well done. Naruto scratched the back of his head. Thanks, Kurama beamed. Oh, I like her. You would. Now shush, Winter Schnee. The woman extended her hand cordially. A pleasure to meet you. Naruto considered her hand for a long moment, feeling somewhat at a loss. Amber was of no help at all. She wouldn't even look at him, but she wouldn't let go of his arm either. Had he done something wrong? Why was Kurama laughing at him again? When he returned his attention to the fair-haired woman and found himself at something on an impasse, but after another moment's consideration and with the faintest exasperation, he reluctantly reached out and clasped it with his own. Naruto Uzumaki. Same. Well, Winter certainly had a strong grip going for her, if nothing else. Unfortunately, in shaking her hand, he opened the floodgates. Well, it seems you have something of an admirer. Wait. Why did Amber sound angry? Had he done something wrong? Only then did Winter deign to notice her, leaning back to appraise the smaller girl with a quiet air. Amber. You're looking well, Schnee. The girl's mouth curled in what might have been a smile. It didn't much look like one. How very nice to see you again. How's Atlas? The Shni's mouth formed a thin line of displeasure. Well enough, she said after a moment's pause, choosing her words with careful intent. I can't complain. You sure it's not too cold? Amber's fingers bit into Naruto's arm, drawing a pained hiss from her partner-to-be. I'd understand if things were a little frigid. Trying to warm up, are we? By the sage. They're trying to kill each other with words. There was a strange note of what sounded disturbingly like awe in Kurama's voice just now. I didn't think it was possible. I'm taking notes. Is that what they're doing? Naruto tilted his head until it was nearly horizontal. I thought they were just being friendly. Boy, you can be denser than a brick when it comes to women. How's your little sister? The blonde's attention snapped back as Amber's voice plucked at his ear. I understand she'll be attending Beacon soon. Of course. Winter retorted, folding both arms before her bosom. A Shni always aims for excellence. We have high standards and respect strength. Amber's gaze sparked with golden flames. How quaint. Naruto looked left. Naruto looked right. Naruto looked left yet again. Right, so I'm just going to step back a bit here. Naruto realized he was missing something and wisely decided to butt out. He didn't much understand women these days, but he knew a spat when he saw one, all the while the barbed insults subtly continued to escalate in the background. He nearly got away. Almost. So close yet so far. Winter's hand locked around his wrist. Herc. Now to be fair, Amber knew Winter, though only through loose association. They'd met a handful of times before when Ironwood had deigned to visit. She couldn't quite call the woman cold, just reserved. Her temper could burn quite hot when roused, but only a scarce few knew that. Winter was vicious in a fight when pressed, but she didn't really go out of her way to express interest in people. People who weren't Ironwood, at least. So why was she actively going out of her way to speak with Naruto, much less grab his arm? She soon had her answer. You displayed a number of fascinating techniques during your battle, not to mention summoning your own familiar. Aha. There it was. Leave it to Winter to cut to the chase. Would you be willing to share just how you... In the end, she needn't have worried, because Naruto's goodwill evaporated like so much steam. No thanks. Much to Amber's delight, there was an angry arch to her partner's voice when he replied, one not even she herself recognized. Perhaps it was common sense. It might have been anger. I'm not interested in sharing anything with Atlas or anyone else at this time. A finger thrust itself into her face, cutting off her diatribe before it could begin. And before you go on about how this could benefit mankind or save the world, stow it. I've seen what chakra can do in the wrong hands. Until you prove yourselves, you're getting nothing from me. No. Less than nothing. I don't even know you, and you're asking me this? Are you crazy? Her hopeful expression collapsed in on itself. Scowling, he tore his arm free and turned away. Leave me alone, Ice Queen. To her credit, Winter only blinked. I'm sorry, what did you just call me? Crow absolutely cackled from the fountain as Glinda pulled him free from the wreckage. Alright, I'm sold. Kid's a keeper. In the background, Ironwood and Oz had fallen silent. Until now. Not from any real lack of discussion, mind you. The spectacle unfolding before them was simply too rare for either to ignore overlong. Now that it dissolved into a glare match between the unlikely trio, Ozpin found himself forced to face the music. Well, best to bite the bullet before it shoots you, as the saying goes. Well? You've seen him now. The headmaster offered. What do you think of him, James? Honestly? Ironwood frowned. I'm not sure what to think. He's erratic to say the least. You're certain he's the one? There can be no doubt in my mind. Ozpin answered. Without him, we would have lost the Fall Maiden. He may be our single best chance at winning this war. That may well be, but wait. Where did he run off to? When the headmaster dared to look back, the blonde was conspicuously absent, and Miss Schneewell. The poor was all but red in the face. Scarlet even. Wait. Why was Amber waving at him? Was that a note in her hand? Ozpin sighed. He does that sometimes. You'll get used to it. Naruto needed to get away, needed to breathe, and so he'd done the only thing he could think to do. He'd run. Hard and fast, without pausing to look back at anyone. In hindsight, there were probably more compelling reasons, but he couldn't think of one. He hadn't meant to just up and bolt, to leave Amber and the others behind with a hastily scrawled note, but he hadn't been able to stop himself, just as he hadn't intended to bolt in the direction of the city as he had. He'd simply picked a point and darted off before anyone could rope him into another argument, and there would be an argument when he returned. Of that much he was certain. He'd stirred the pot too much with that Schnee girl to escape without a tongue lashing. Kurama's opinion of Winter, however, had changed. How dare she call me a familiar? To think I almost fancied her. Well, Naruto put in as he vaulted over roadblock, maybe she meant it as a term of endearment. Apologize. The old fox snarled back at him. What? He jolted. What did I say? Apologize. Alright. The blonde threw his hands out at his sides and caught a lamppost, swinging himself atop it to draw an odd look from passerby. Grumpy much? Now as he came to a halt and gazed out at the town below, he realized he might have made a mistake. Running had seemed like a good idea at the time. He'd intended to return, of course, but not any time soon. Sure enough, Beacon Academy loomed as a faint silhouette in the distance when he stole a glance over his shoulder. Well, at least he wouldn't get lost. He should probably get down before he drew a crowd. Clambering down proved easy enough. Getting his bearings? Less so, a lot less. Now that the panic and anger had inevitably faded, Naruto found himself at a crossroads. Quite literally, his little stunt had created something of a scene. Much to his chagrin, he had drawn a crowd. Among them a young girl wearing dark clothes and red hood gaped at him from across the street, bright eyes wide. Gods, was she bouncing up and down? She was. Neat. Had that been the end of it, he might have yet slipped away into the crowd unnoticed. But there was another girl beside her, one with violet eyes and striking golden hair brighter than the sun. Her sister? As he looked on, she tugged at an older man's sleeve. Their father? And leveled a finger of her own at him, mouth moving in some unheard question. He strained his ears and caught the last of her words. Who's that, Dad? Ruby! Stop bouncing. But that was so cool. Naruto flushed. Hi. A reluctant arm rose in what he hoped was a jaunty wave, one that backfired horribly, judging by their father's sudden scowl. Definitely their father. He knew that look, knew better than to approach and challenge it. In short order the older man led the two girls away by the hand. The blonde looked back at him. He almost wanted to say something, but a snap from Kurama stopped him at the last moment. Don't just stand there in the middle of the street. They're just kids. Walk. For want of anything better to do, Naruto did just that. Listless legs carried him in the opposite direction, and his mind began to move. Where had he gone wrong? He just wanted to make people happy. In his heart of hearts, he simply couldn't say no to a good cause. That meant protecting Amber. Not that she needed it. Still, the way she looked at him gave him pause. If that meant this huntsman business everyone seemed to be on about, well. He wasn't averse to helping, but he wasn't keen on fighting another war either. For now, that was the right thing to do. Right. Never mind the fact that Oz and Crow had tried to manipulate his feelings. He was well past such petty anger. But what do you want? Leave it to Kurama to ask the tough questions. He turned his gaze toward the ruined moon only just now beginning to rear its head over the horizon. It served as a painful reminder of what he'd lost. This wasn't his world. No matter how much he might wish it were so, he couldn't simply tear open a hole and jump back through. That way was lost to him. Yet still, his heart cried out for his world. I want to go home. Kurama honored him with silence. Then, that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. I know. The words tasted like ash on his tongue as he rounded a corner. Like defeat. Speaking them was tantamount to giving up. Naruto never gave up. Ever. But here? Now, he just wanted to bury his head in a bowl of ramen and forget today ever happened. This world had ramen, right? It would be blasphemy if it didn't. Once more, he let his legs lead him. He still wasn't looking, still wandering the streets, when he slammed headlong into the poor girl. There was no evil intent to warn him, no implicit sense of violence to prepare his muscles in time. He simply slammed right into her. She didn't make a sound, even when she toppled backward. Not a grunt. Not a cry. Not even a yelp. It was only his instincts that saved him from disaster, and even then barely caught her. Such was his surprise. Geez, I'm sorry about that. What was it with the women in this world and their odd penchant for clothes? This one wore a strange white-tailed jacket with a pink interior, button and one wide broad tail, brown pants, black gloves, and black and white boots. Said boots revealed themselves to be very high heels as the girl did a little pirouette and stepped back. Beneath her jacket he glimpsed what might have been a brown corset, curved in the middle and at the bottom, exposing her hips. Well, her fashion style was certainly unique, if nothing else. She also wears a multitude of necklaces, which hang haphazardly around her neck. Well, color me intrigued. Kurama hummed. She wasn't there a minute ago. Now who's being paranoid? Naruto turned back to her, blinking. Never mind the multitude of necklaces hanging haphazardly around her neck or the fact that the girl was incredibly short even with her heels. She barely came up to his chest, but her hair and the matching eyes in spite of everything else, baffled him the most. Pink. Brown. White. Unbidden, he thought of a certain ice cream he'd once had for dessert. In a word, Neapolitan. It kinda suited her. Right. Apologies. Best to get on that. You alright? He offered tentatively. Look, I really am sorry. Didn't mean to bowl you over like that and you're not talking. The girl tilted her head as Reclaim found her footing and mimed a gesture to her throat. Naruto groaned. You didn't talk, do you? An emphatic shake of said head answered his question. So what do I call you? A small dry erase sign snapped up in response, business end facing toward the girl. Much to Naruto's surprise and mild amusement, the girl quickly scribbled on it and turned it around to reveal its contents to him. Wasn't that hard to read either, given that only 3 letters awaited him there. He squinted at it. Neo? Her head bobbed. Bit of an odd name, hey. An umbrella sailed out of nowhere to smack his nose. Maybe it was her hair, maybe it was his hunger talking, maybe he was just being a foolish young man looking for a distraction. But, hey, you want to get a bowl ice cream, or something? When she didn't answer, Naruto buelled on with a smile. My treat. The girl Neo, he reminded himself, raised a question finger and pointed at herself. Of course I mean you. Naruto nearly laughed. Who else? Neo made a show of looking left and right. Alright. Know any place good? Neo's mismatching gaze had all but lit up like fireworks at the mention of the confectionery dish. Now, she didn't even need her sign to convey her enthusiasm this time. Her eyes were shining. Brighter than stars. Quick as a flash her wrist seized his before he could even think to stop her. He could have broken free any number of ways short order he found himself hauled off at breakneck speed. This wasn't a trap, he told himself. How could someone so small possibly be dangerous? Ozpin had given him some lean. Or whatever amounted to currency here. Surely there was no harm in using it, right? And he was hungry. Ramen would be nice. But ice cream was a close second. Surely there wasn't any harm in this random act of kindness. Surely it wouldn't come back to bite him later. So he decided to be indulgent, to allow the skipping girl to lead him where she would. Naruto had no way of knowing the series of events he'd just set into motion. It would prove to be quite the eventful afternoon indeed. No, more than that. A new life awaited him here. Why hadn't he seen that? Or realized it? He was holding himself back, here, him. Naruto. No one else. He had but to grasp it, just like her hand. And so he did, happily. Broken inside, Winter's interlude. Winter was waiting for him when he returned. Naruto knew that color the moment he stepped back onto Beacon Grounds. He'd seared it into his mind like a laser. Any lingering happiness that might have clung onto him from his brief little excursion vanished the moment he laid eye on the Schnee lurking near the academy doors. Had that been the end of it, he might have been able to ignore her. But there was something in her posture that alerted him, just as much as the tide of negative emotions he felt roiling off her back. Her spine was too rigid, her head raised, hands clasped behind her back, as though she were standing firmly at attention. As if she were standing guard, as if she were waiting for someone, waiting for them, most likely. Not just him, but Kurama. Nope, oh hell no. Well, they were in agreement about that at least. Worse, they were alone. His friend had long since slipped away back in the plaza, leaving him to wander back at his leisure. A shame. Naruto found Neo to be good company. If a tad first thought was to turn around and leave the specialists behind, simply walk back the way he'd come out of spite if nothing else. It was tempting. Oh so tempting. She wouldn't be able to stop him. He wanted nothing to do with this wintry woman and whatever mad machinations she might be plotting. The sun had already begun to set, and he wanted nothing more than to tumble into whatever bed Ozpin provided him. You know what they say, the only out is through. Kurama groaned. She's going to cause a scene. Naruto swore. I just know it. Bah. If it's a fight she wants, we can take her. His partner had a point. It was still unpleasant. Frantically, Naruto cast his gaze about for allies. He saw only an errant crow perched on a lamppost. It could have been Chrono. When he stretched his senses out, he was annoyed, and somewhat surprised to find that he couldn't tell if it was a bird or a certain drunkard masquerading as one. Well, that was annoying. Much to his dismay, Amber was nowhere to be found on the grounds either. Of course she wasn't. She had a life of her own. He couldn't expect her to be with him every waking moment. Casting his senses out further merely confirmed it. She was further away in the dorms, a veritable burning beacon, and he was sure there was a pun hiding in there somewhere, just waiting to be ignited. Ozpin wasn't further up behind her? Trying to sense the geezer was like difficult. His presence felt well, not slippery, but different. Old. Ancient. He almost bemused to have been noticed. Could Ozpin sense him in turn? On a whim, he flung his senses at Winter instead. He expected coldness. Stark clarity from a professional. What he found was anger. Not hatred or wrath or even something like spite. Just resigned anger. Emotions masked beneath a thin veneer of ice, ready to burst forth at the slightest provocation. Her anger wasn't even directed outward at him, but inward. At herself. She felt powerless. Humiliated. Spirits, she was on the verge of tears. Why? It stung and he withdrew his senses with a hiss. What was that about? Kurama asked. Naruto forebore the urge to sigh. Your guess is as good as mine, partner. Well, nothing ventured, nothing gained, as it were. With a grimace, the shinobi started forward. Remarkably, Winter made no move to challenge him, even as the distance between them steadily shrank. Yards. Feet. Inches now. She wasn't even looking at him. In fact, she seemed far too busy muttering to herself. If that was how she wanted to play things, then fine. He was past her now, well and truly clear. Perhaps he'd been mistaken. If he could just slip past her without exchanging words, he would call this a victory. 3 more steps now would carry him inside, and he was going to slam that door behind him for good measure. I'm sorry. Damn it all to hell. Against his better judgment, Naruto turned around. What was that, Ice Queen? Her lips thinned, but she stamped down her anger and didn't rise to the bait. Please do not call me that. Crow would have baited her. Naruto nearly did know. He should leave. Right now. Walk away from whatever the hell this was. This wasn't his problem. He wasn't here to fix Winter's daddy issues or what have you. He had problems enough without a powerful woman trying to usurp the secrets of chakra from him. He boss likely wanted to weaponize the stuff. And wasn't that just another can of worms? Guys, sorry, I heard none of that. He tilted his head, watching a frown flit across her face. Wanna run it by me again? Winter's hand went white-knuckled around the hilt of her saber, but she didn't draw. I wanted to apologize. For my earlier transgression. Oh, so you're. Apologize to the brat. Never mind the fox. Kurama would have none of it. What about me? Where's my apology? Under ideal circumstances, Naruto would have forgiven her and been done with it. He wasn't a vindictive person unless pranks were involved, and even then there was a line he wouldn't cross. But this woman had insulted his friend, tried to pry the secrets of chakra from his grasp, and called Kurama a lowly familiar. The fox was still sulking over that. All told, Winter Schnee hadn't painted the most promising picture of herself for either of them. Nope. No way in hell was going to make this easy for her. Which one? His head tilted almost horizontal this time. A muscle jumped in her jaw. Gods, you're absolutely insufferable. No, you just bring out the worst in me. Slim shoulders shrugged as she seethed silently. Don't like it? Don't bother me. He paused, almost as afterthought. Also, Kurama wants an apology. Winter blinked, confusion sweeping away anger. Who is Kurama? Shit. He'd let that one slip out. He's the one you call the familiar. Naruto winced as their voices compounded one another. He took umbrage to what you said earlier. He doesn't like being called that. Too late, he saw the spark of interest shown in those ice blue eyes. What is he, then? A parasite? Can you communicate with him? Naruto flinched as Kurama went terribly, horribly still in the back of his head, going so far as to withdraw from the conversation entirely. Parasite? That was worse than a familiar. So much worse. On a whim, the blonde dipped into the seal in a frantic attempt to peek. Mistakes were made. There were no words for what he found there, and the fox nearly crushed him in a fit of apocalyptic fury. He snapped back to the waking world just in time to catch a roar that rattled his ears and nearly left him deaf. Parasite? Naruto flinched at the ensuing migraine that followed. Oh. No, not that. Definitely not that. Take it back, take it back. Back. Winter most assuredly did not take it back. Instead, she raised a hand, palm upright. Let me show you something. When she opened said palm, Naruto wasn't sure what to expect. A pale glyph was the last thing he expected to see. At least he assumed it was a glyph. He watched dance before her upturned fingers like a tiny snowflake for a few moments, listening to it was softly while he looked on. Sure, it looked pretty, but what was the point of it? A seal? That's nice? He ventured. This is my semblance. Winter explained, holding the glyph up for closer inspection as he leaned in. The Schnee family, my family is unique in the fact that this very semblance runs in our bloodline and only ours. It also allows us to summon defeated enemies. So like a bloodline? That was a thing here, in a sense, yes. Winter preened. Would you kindly step back? Reluctantly, Naruto did as he'd been bade. This far enough for you, then? Without pause the Atlas specialist turned and drove her rapier into the earth. A larger glyph bloomed beneath her feet and gave birth to something. He couldn't think of any other word for the strange pale-winged beast that arose to greet him. It looked monstrous. Yet it made no move to attack him. Even when he stepped forward and poked at it, the creature stood unflinching in the face of his curiosity. Well, he whistled. That's certainly new. Do you understand now? Winter straightened. Only a Schnee should have this ability, and you were seen using what appeared to a variation of it. It shouldn't be possible. Her nose wrinkled. Unless we're related. Nope. Not a chance in hell. Naruto crossed his arms in an X shape and made a face of his own. Not happening. I'm not even from around here. Winter blew out a relieved breath. Good. I don't fancy the idea of having another brother. Just like that, the conversation got away from them once again. You're not going to tell me who Kurama is, are you? Not a chance in hell, Ice Queen. Naruto said. Must you? She flung up her arms. Yes, I must. Naruto shifted uneasily, watching the specialist like a hawk as he raised his chin in defiance. He didn't trust her. No. Not yet, but her words had stole some of his anger, as much as he wanted to hold on to it. Winter had certainly held on to hers and explained just why she was so keen he hadn't told her anything important, so long as she didn't press the matter. He was willing to let bygones be bygones. He wasn't here to make enemies, and if Amber was to be trusted, which she was, he really didn't want to go barking up this tree, but he would if they pushed him. Try as he might, he couldn't bring himself to like Ironwood. The man seemed alright, but he had a militaristic approach to everything. It reminded him too much of Danzo. Please listen. When Winter's hand closed around his, so too did his gaze snap back to her. The power you have, it could change the world. If you would only explain how it works. Naruto jerked his hand free from hers. And just like that the anger came roaring back all over again. Did Ironsides put you up to this? He deliberately mispronounced the name. Sure enough, her mouth twitched. Just a fraction. Just an inch. Naruto pounced on like a fox. You almost had me. He shook his head in disbelief, misreading her intent entirely. I should have known. Bitter laugh burst out of him despite his best effort to hold it in. Orders are orders. That's all you Atlas folk seem to care about. Something ugly reared its head in his thoughts, and he slapped her hand away when it came for him again. How can you be so broken inside? Winter flinched as though he'd struck her. He may as well have, but he wasn't finished with her. Not by a long shot. No, I didn't. I know your type. He started forward, and she retreated just as quickly. You live for your orders. You die for your orders. His finger stabbed her in the stomach and she winced. The mission is all that matters. The end result is all that matters. Obey. Do as you're told. He snapped his fingers and a stray spark skittered between them. Never step out of line. Never think for yourself. Never, never, never. His lip curled in a smile that felt just as bitter as his words. Think for yourself instead of your orders rules for once, damn it. People like you make me sick. I'm here because I want to be. She actually drew her rapier, the idiot. Who are you to say otherwise? Naruto grit his teeth. Riddle me this, then. Those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. His lips curl into a snarl as his emotions got the better of him. Tell me, would you abandon your friends for your precious rules, Shni? Amber mentioned you had a sister. Would you sacrifice her just to please Ironwood? Winter jerked back. If it's not, idiot. Her reluctance was the straw that broke the camel's back. Chakra burst from Naruto's stomach in a low roar, his body snapping into 7 shades gold and black as 9 truth-seeking spheres sizzled into existence behind his back. It was overkill in every sense of the word. His base form would have been more than enough for this. He didn't care. With but a thought, a staff snapped into his hand, one he immediately used to sweep her weapon aside and knock her right on her arse. He willfully avoided using anything else, batted aside her blade, and knocked Winter down again when she tried to get up and attack. In a fit of pique, she struck out at his head. Kurama must have been just as angry as him, because the golden effigy of a howling fox's skull roared into life around him a heartbeat later to guard him. Her rapier skittered harmlessly off that scowling shroud. No wait, his partner was actually roaring at her. That suited him just fine. He rather felt like roaring himself right about now. So he gave his partner sway and that golden head grew into a neck, sprouted shoulders and torso, followed soon thereafter by great looming legs, all 9 terrible tails. In an instant Kurama towered over the specialist in all his golden glory, rested and whole. A giant paw crushed her summoned manticore like brittle glass before it could take flight. The fear in her eyes as she stumbled back was all the answer he needed. How could someone be so dense? So blind? In his eyes, she was no better than one of Danzo's root. She followed Ironwood's orders slavishly, with scarcely a thought for herself. Ironwood might not half the monster that man was, but Winter's slavish devotion irked him more than any measure. At least Sai thought for himself, or learned to. With this woman it was all orders, orders and more orders. Atlas this. Ironwood that. It lit a fire in Naruto's throat, one that came searing up in the form of a furious bellow all his own. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted to see? Apparently not. His sonic scream knocked the older woman right on her rear all over again. She struck the ground and tumbled, hair flying free from its braid, aura flickering faintly. He could have crushed her then, torn her apart in any number of ways if he were inclined. Somehow, he restrained himself. He didn't want to hurt her, just knock some sense into that thick skull of hers. Preferably with his voice. So once more, it fell to words. All right, listen here, Ice Queen. He jabbed a finger forward, taking a small vindictive pleasure in watching her eye twitch. I've had a hell of a day here. Right now, I just want to fall into bed and pretend this never happened. Taking a pause for breath, he fixed her with the blackest look he could must. So we're going to settle this here and now. What do you want out of life? Tell the truth. I'll know if you lie. I want the world to be safe. Nope. He read her like a book. Winter balked. It's not that simple. In a flash of light, Naruto dispelled the cloak and stormed up to her. Yes, it is. He smashed his forehead against her own, heedless of her flush. What do you want? On the back foot, Winter began to waver. I want you to get out of my face. Now. You cheeky little upstart. Not good enough. He headbutted her, and she winced when he reeled her back in by the wrist. What? Do you want? A small, hysterical sob burst out of the specialist as she teetered in his grasp. Too much. It was all too much for her to take in at once. When faced with that towering creature, all thoughts of combat escaped her. She'd been afraid. She was still afraid. Knowing he could snap back into that thing at any moment, and rip her apart, it shattered her self-control and left her vulnerable. Lying would avail her nothing here. No amount of plots or schemes or adherence to order would save her. This was no boy to be manipulated, this wasn't even a weapon. He was a living, breathing force of nature, one more than capable of wiping Atlas from the map, and she'd woken his wrath. Answer me. Naruto's grip on her wrist nearly numbed her arm. Now, Winter flailed for an answer and found nothing. What did she want? To be in control of her own destiny. Her childhood back. To be loved. She wanted mother and father to care about her, not drive themselves deeper into drink and depravity. She wished she'd been brave enough to take her first steps out into the world on her own. She wished she'd been foolish enough to bring Weiss and Whitley with her. She wanted so many things. Many of them involved her past, a past she couldn't change. None of them mattered now. Her life had ceased to be her own long ago. She'd come to accept that fact. Or so she thought. And yet, now she found herself on the verge of tears, about to suffer a breakdown. Would a lie bring her death? Was this how it would end? Oh, if father could see her now. How he'd laugh at her. Mother would just sigh. She'd been dismantled on every front. Embarrassing. Humiliating. It wasn't just Naruto's strength that had left her undone, though that certainly played a factor in her feelings. It was him. This infuriating bloody blasted blonde tore her defenses down with his words as he continued to stand in her way, relentlessly challenging her on every front. She couldn't take it. Didn't know what to do with it. This irritating warrior gave her personal feelings. Therein lay the problem. She wasn't used to such things. She wasn't sure if she wanted to hug him or stab him in the eye. He'd motivated her somehow, woken something she hadn't known was there. By all accounts he'd be a horrible soldier, yet the Sammit's stubborn defiance would have made him an excellent leader. He might yet be one, somewhere, someday. It stirred something in Winter's bitter heart. Respect went to war with wrath only to be ambushed and summarily slaughtered by another, far more foreign emotion. She wanted him under her command. The things he could accomplish. But that would never happen. If she couldn't have that, if she were to die here, let it be without regrets. It was a moment of passion, of anger and fury and fear that turned into a different feeling entirely. In a fit of pique, she chose to act on those emotions. If I tell you, will you let go of me? Fierce blue eyes blazed up at her, made her heart race. Sure thing. Winter stepped into him all at once, eyes wet, chest heaving. Then she seized him in the fiercest embrace she had. Did you do this on purpose? Did you plan this? Those very same eyes widened. I have no idea. Winter didn't give him a chance to react or speak, knowing he could escape at any moment if he wished. Nor did she trust her resolve to last. So she moved. Acted. With his mind muddled by her actions and his grip slackened thanks to their close proximity, she took the chance to lean in, take his face in both hands and press her mouth to his. It was her first kiss, a clumsy, awkward gesture, one she wasn't even wholly aware of at first, much less capable in. Why would she be? No one had ever caught her eye like before, no one had ever pushed her to her limits, and beyond. The second wasn't much better by half. Her teeth clicked against his and a hot jolt of pain shot through her lower lip. Naruto had all but turned to stone in her grasp, but he hadn't tried to escape yet either. Was that good? Bad? Horrible? Excellent? Winter didn't know, and not knowing terrified her beyond measure. Worse, his eyes were decidedly blank when she pulled away, as if he'd simply faded out. Somehow, that made her even more cross. She knew she was wholly out of touch when it came to her emotions, but the bastard could at least do something. He wasn't even blinking. It was like he'd gone catatonic. It made the heat roar in her chest all the more. Damn him. He'd gone to all this trouble to get her riled up. He could at least answer her. If you don't respond, she warned, I'm going to be very cross MMPH. She barely felt his arm tighten around hers before he yanked her back down to him with a snarl. Naruto's mouth tasted like fire against hers, if it could be called such a thing. All heat and warmth, willpower and determination. For all his intensity, he was just as clumsy as her. Oddly enough, it made the specialist feel better. They were, the both of them, inexperienced in this. He was even gentle with his hands at first, careful not to let them roam to untoward places like some lust-filled teenager. Both palms took up firm residence on her hips and stayed, freeing up her hands to do with them as she wished. Winter used them to push him into the nearest pillar, one she pressed him against. You did this to me. The words were a growl in his ear. Accept responsibility for your actions. To her dismay, her captive actually laughed. He sounded just as nervous as she felt. Hey! I didn't ask for this. Why me? You asked me what I wanted. I chose you. Why? She arched a silver brow at him, laying out her decision clearly for him as she did all things. Are you rejecting my advances? He twisted to slam her against that same pillar with vicious force. Her aura flared for a moment before it held strong. Not so the stone. Winter felt a crack beneath her back. Something in her winced. That something died a swift death as his mouth claimed hers again with a singular ferocity. She fought back, anger and passion lending her limbs strength as she tore at him. Perhaps this was wrong. Perhaps this was a mistake. Perhaps it would only lead to heartbreak. Winter didn't care. For the first time in an age she'd found a release for her emotions, and damn it all, she was going to ride this for all it was worth before the consequences slapped her upside the head. Not once did she think of Ironwood's orders. Rather, she couldn't think. Gods, she was terrible at this. She probably looked a mess, her lips red, hair in disarray, yet he didn't let go of her. Not a word of this to Crow, she gasped as his lips brushed her neck. If you breathe a word of this to him, are you kidding? Blue eyes gleamed in the dim light. If that old bird saw this, should be insufferable. He's bad enough as is. But why, so long as you understand? The specialist preened, silencing him with her mouth once more. Now shut up and kiss me. Whatever Naruto's hesitations, his body betrayed him. A lone hand dipped beneath her thigh to lift her leg. In retaliation, the specialist hooked her heel against his and pulled him closer, fingers splayed across his open jacket. Callous fingers brushed across the swell of her breast, and she didn't so much snarl as she did hum. This was improper. Wrong. Debauchery on the highest level. Weiss would shriek if she ever caught wind of this. Never mind being caught in the open. The thought should have snapped her out of her daze, should have brought her back to sanity. It did not. Her emotions had already run the gamut more than once in the last few minutes. She'd gone from angry, to terrified, back to angry, livid, and now this. If this was what release felt like, if this was what it felt like to be a person, then perhaps her emotions weren't something to be feared. Stop, until he pushed her away. Will you just wait a second? No. She was tired of stopping, tired of waiting, tired of thinking. Why couldn't he just let her have this? Despite her attempts to ignore him, Naruto got the better of her. Strong hands pressed against Winter's shoulders to push her back. She made a noise of frustration as the blonde came to his senses and moved to nudge her away, but wasn't able to fight against it. For all her failings, she just didn't have the strength. He was still stronger than her, an insurmountable wall she had yet to scale. So too was his expression. He looked almost ashamed of what he'd done, of the fact that he'd lost himself to lust. Isn't this moving kinda fast? Naruto muttered, looking away from her, I barely even know you. Look. He steeled himself, and shook his head. I shouldn't have done that. I wasn't thinking. How cute. He was embarrassed. Winter pounced on it. What are you proposing then? A date? A what? He sputtered out, caught flat-footed by her response. Never been on one of those before. Excellent. There. She was in control again. You can pick me up at 7. I'll send the details to your scroll. I don't have one of those. He flung up his arms in exasperation. Let me get a word in, will you? Stop manhandling me. You don't have a scroll? She wasn't letting him get away that easily. Oh no. Not now. Her eyes narrowed. We'll just have to fix that then, won't we? Before he could offer further protest, she latched on his arm and dragged him into the school. And if a certain bird continued to observe the two of them from afar, well, neither noticed. Birds couldn't curse. If they could, half the city would have heard crow. Stirring seasons. I've created a monster, haven't I? No. Not a monster. Kurama sniped. You've unleashed an ice devil. Naruto palmed his face and fought down the urge to ram his head into the nearest wall as Winter walked away from him. He won, if only just. It still felt like a defeat as he watched the Elysian specialist strut back toward the entrance, because Winter absolutely strutted. There could be no denying the spring in her step, no matter how much he might wish it otherwise. She sashayed away with a smile on her lips, hips swinging in a way that they hadn't before, and he couldn't help but stare. This was her victory. They both knew it, just as he knew he hadn't been able to refuse her offer. Was. His partner scoffed, drawing another wince from the blonde. I don't know what you see in her. Maybe he was right. Only a few moments ago, Winter had given him a chance to bow out, to simply rebuff her, decline the date, and step back. Yes, it would have been tantamount to admitting his own cowardice. Yes, he would have felt like a fool after losing his temper to her like that, and yes, his ego would have taken a bruising. But the offer had been made in good faith. He'd sensed that much. And he turned it down. In the end, he hadn't been able to say no to her, not honestly. There was something there. It certainly wasn't love, but he couldn't call it lust either. Spirits, he hadn't known what lust even was until recently. Like it or not, she'd stirred something in him. His hormones were awake now and they would not be put back to sleep so easily. He thawed something in her and for better or worse, captured her attention. This is your fault, she'd said. Take responsibility, she said. Naruto Uzumaki was many things, but he was a man of his word. One date. That was it. Then he'd wash his hands of this madness assuming he survived. Still, with Winter gone, he found he could think again. Which was a problem given that said thoughts kept flashing back to a said specialist, and just how fiery she'd been with him. Oh, now you feel bad? Kurama proved just as ruthless, his retort nearly scathing within the seal. I didn't think you cared given how busy you were burying your tongue in dash. Stop, stop, stop. Naruto felt his face turn scarlet as he flung himself down the nearest hall he could find, not caring which direction he took as long as it led him away from here. He'd been had. Tempers had run hot and passions far hotter still. He wouldn't lie, part of him found Winter attractive. Any healthy young man, and likely more than a few women, could appreciate her beauty. She was strong and stubborn and fierce in spirits. He had no idea what to do with her. By the log, he'd never been on a date before. He didn't know what to do. What should he do? Even now the memory of their unlikely encounter burned bright in the back of his mind like a roaring inferno. Her hips ground against his as she gasped his name, her body smashed against his chest, those round beautiful globes straining against her jacket as she dragged her lips against Ga. No, down, boy. Naruto slapped his cheeks. Bad Naruto. Do not fraternize with the enemy. She just wants your secrets, and quite possibly your body. Did the teasing never end? Grah! This time Naruto lost the battle with himself, and his head impacted the nearest wall he could find with blistering speed. Plaster yielded before his forehead with a dull crunch, but he didn't feel any better. So he headbutted the wall again. And again. 9 times did his skull strike. It was a mistake, alright? He wailed, stomping a foot against the carpeted floor. I was pissed off, and so was she. We weren't thinking clearly. Really, I thought you had better taste than that. The fox scoffed. She called me a parasite. To be fair, she'll probably apologize if we asked her. Oh ho! And how gallantly he defends her. Kurama's grin widened to shit-eating proportions as the whiskered warrior squawked to denial. And you're taking her on a date tomorrow evening. Not one for critical thinking, are you? How did you even survive this long without me? Because I didn't pick fights with girls like this. Naruto muttered into a palm before shaking his head and taking another right. I'm not used to deal with people like this at all. He flailed a hand at the empty air, half expecting the universe to slap it down out of spite. Amber's an exception, but this world just has all kinds of people, you know? The silence that followed proved telling, deafening even. Look, I'll deal with it. We'll let her down gently afterward and forget this ever happened. Simple, yeah? Tell that to your libido. The fox sighed. Sod off. Perhaps it was pride on Naruto's part that had kept him from backing down. Perhaps it was these bloody hormones. Perhaps he simply wanted to prove her wrong. He hadn't meant to dredge up painful issues for her, let alone melt her cold, cold heart. Some small, traitorous part of him was happy that he'd managed to change her at all. Another, more curious part, wondered why he hadn't been accosted by a horde of angry students yet. This was a school, right? Ozpin had said as much. If so, then where the hell were the brats? Night or no, he turned into a giant golden fox and rampaged around the main plaza. He'd made quite a bit of noise while doing it, too. How did people sleep through that? Even before that, he'd beaten the tar out of Crow. And not a single student had been seen. Why? Maybe they're on vacation. That would be lucky, Naruto agreed, glancing over his shoulder. Except they aren't. A shadow flickered in the corner of his vision, but whoever it was didn't challenge him. Stretching his senses outward merely confirmed his suspicions. He spun and glimpsed a pair of brown eyes framed by dark hair and a pale complexion. Its owner saw him and ducked behind a corner. Huh. Shy little thing. Hello? He ventured weakly, raising an arm. No one emerged. Huh. He'd almost forgotten what it was like to be feared. Bah, ignore it. His partner tamped down on the emotion. Who cares what some kid thinks? Under normal circumstances, Naruto might have challenged that remark and chased after the student in an attempt to change what was doubtlessly a negative view of him. Or was it students? He couldn't be sure. He was a friendly person after all. He didn't delight in fear and he certainly didn't enjoy frightening others. But he was tired. By the log, he just wanted to tumble into bed and forget about this awful day. So he let them go. If they didn't want to confront him, he certainly wasn't going to be bothered with them. No skin off his nose. Thus, armed with his new scroll, the functions of which Winter had spent the last hour drilling into his head, Naruto eventually reached the destination Ozpin had set for him. The door before him felt like the gate to Ninth Circle Hell, more so the golden numbers looming above it. Was this a joke? It had to be a joke. It must be. Crow had something to do with this, he just knew it. Or perhaps Ozpin? Maybe both. Glinda didn't strike him as the sort to be this petty, but he knew her the least of all three. His introspection did nothing to muffle Kurama's laughter. If the fox hadn't been laughing before, he was absolutely howling now. I take it back. Kurama crowed darkly. I like the old geezer. He's got style. Room 69? Naruto swore as his right eye began to twitch viciously. Oh, I am going to gut Ozpin for this. But that was undoubtedly Ember herself behind the door. She burned like a beacon in his mind's eye, one idly shuffling about the room proper within. He'd been gravitating toward her this entire time, using his superior senses to map his way. It wasn't that he was able to see through the door, on the contrary. He couldn't, but rather he was able to detect who was behind it. He was to share this dorm room with her if Ozpin was to be believed. Wouldn't that be fun? More machinations on the part of the old sage, no doubt. Still, nothing ventured, nothing gained, as they said. Trembling hands fumbled for his scroll, used it to unlock the door, and eased it open before hesitation could sink its cruel claws into him. Tentatively, he poked his head through. Pardon the intrusion. His mind rebooted immediately at the heavenly sight that greeted him within. There could be no other word for the glorious expanse that greeted his vision when he opened the door. It wasn't the humble room, the twin beds, or any such Spartan furnishing that struck Naruto speechless. Nor was it the pale moonlight spilling through the window, or even the faint candles burning at said window's edge. It was the young woman sitting on one of said beds within, her back bared to him. She wasn't wearing any clothes. Well, perhaps that was a bit of a misnomer on his part. Amber wasn't completely naked. She still had her underwear and was in the process of donning the lower half of said undergarments. The faintest waft of humidity, and her still damp hair, suggested she just finished taking a shower. Naruto felt his throat go dry, and for once in his life, Kurama had fallen curiously silent. Huh. Red lace. A small, distracted part of him mused. Not a bad look for Amber. She wasn't wholly aware of him yet. Her arms were overextended, still in the process of tugging on her panties. There at least, her modesty was preserved. Unfortunately, that left the rest of her utterly exposed. Even from this angle he could see one long leg extended, fingers hooked in the waistband of her underwear, as she lazily finished pulling it up. From there she turned to stretch, exposing her bare back to him. By the log, he could see where the arrow had gone through her. He'd healed Amber during her fight, of course, but the mark remained and he was staring at her back. God, he felt like a lek. Said back stiffened as its owner sensed something amiss. Retreat! Retreat! Naruto's mind wailed. Mission failed. We'll get him next time. Right, he could do this. Escape shouldn't be a problem. He was a ninja. He was stealth. He was shadow. Creak. A floorboard groaned treacherously underfoot, betraying his position and leaving him to curse like a sailor. Who is? Even as the wayward shinobi realized his plight, Amber turned towards the sound toward him, and her bright eyes lit up in confusion, followed shortly thereafter by mute horror. She saw him, and her cheeks turned utterly scarlet. Brown hair seemed to lift in an unseen breeze, forming a chocolate halo around her head. Behind her the candles flickered fitfully, and somehow, she mastered herself before the wind could rage out of control. Not so her tongue. Meep. Amber said. Irk. Naruto agreed wholeheartedly. For a fleeting instant he felt her negative emotions spike and tensed to dodge forward. He needn't have. Amber threw herself backward in the same moment that he lunged. In a whirling wind she dove into her bed and all but buried herself beneath the autumn-colored sheets. Her head emerged a heartbeat later, akin to a startled rabbit poking its head of their burrow. Embarrassment turned her tan cheeks a pretty shade of pink, and she all but hunkered down behind the sheets, eyes peeking out over the edge. What are you doing in my room? She squeaked, eyes wide and wild in her head. This is too soon. My heart isn't ready. I haven't had a chance to prepare myself yet. This is my room, too. Naruto shot back, brandishing his scroll between them like a shield. See? Ozpin gave me a key. He said you knew about this. I knew no such thing. Well, it's what he told me, princess. Amber's fingers curled furtively around the covers. Honest? Yes. Naruto kept that hand between them just in case she tried to pelt him with a pillow or a lightning bolt. He'd seen what an angry Amber could do with one of those and didn't fancy being struck by one. I mean it. I just went where the old bastard told me to go. You're not lying to me? For the love of no. Naruto hissed. Why would I do that? Amber's sullen silence lent further weight to her trust issues. Frantically, the blonde cast his gaze about for something, anything that could distract her. His foot caught on something. His shoes snagged on a pair of fluffy-looking bottoms just out of reach. Pink, with little white rabbits on them. She must have forgotten them in her frantic flight. There was even a matching black shirt with another white rabbit emblazoned on the front. Hazy blue eyes squinted at the words written beneath the bunny's visage. Pumpkin Pete? The hell was that? A mascot or something? Nice pajamas? Amber turned incandescent. Those aren't mine. Naruto didn't laugh. He absolutely did not laugh. Alas, the same could not be said for Kurama. Oh, that's just precious. Amber took one look at his face and her defiance wilted. Gimme. She held out a hand, the other clutching the blankets to her chest. Naruto dutifully retrieved the fallen garments and handed them to her. Amber snatched them out of his hands and dove beneath the blankets. A bit of wriggling and growling could growling be called cute. Later, and she emerged from her cocoon of covers once more, fully dressed. No violence or threats of said violence followed the maiden's actions, and the blonde released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. She wasn't going to fling things at him or call him a pervert? Huh. Neat. Maybe there was some hope for him after all. Soyori not going to do anything? Naruto asked as much. That depends. She tilted her head at him. Are you sorry for walking in on me? His head bobbed in immediate agreement. Very sorry. I should have knocked first. My bad. Good. Amber beamed, the storm clouds fleeing from her brow. I knew there was a reason I liked you. Naruto instantly recalled Winter's words and wilted. You'd have to be dense as a brick to miss the tension between the two of them. As long as he didn't speak of it, things would be fine. Winter was complicated. She had all manner of issues he didn't want to get into. Amber he liked, or felt he could come to like in time. She spoke her mind. She was fiery and feisty, and so very full of life. She smelled of the seasons and didn't call Kurama a familiar, or a parasite, the latter chimed. For that alone, she gets a pass in my book. You're not going to let that go, are you? Never. Amber still hadn't spoken further. If anything, she seemed to be waiting for him to take the lead. And wasn't that just terrific? A few hours ago he would have blindly buelled ahead and thought nothing of it. Now, Naruto found his eyes had not quite been opened, but he was aware of things he hadn't been before. Amber was a beautiful girl and she was close. Very close. Her scent wafted over him, bringing with it the faint aroma of fall and all the months that followed it. It was heady. Would you like to sit? She asked quietly, patting the space beside her. Naruto complied, watching her like a hawk would a rabbit. Sad as it might seem, even with Winter's revelation, he still didn't much understand women, even if his interest in them had been piqued. Sakura and Tsunade hadn't been the best examples in that regard. Oh, they were good people, make no mistake about that, they were just punchy. And loud. Very loud. You alright? Frantically, he flailed for a new subject. So, you live here in the dorms? Alone? Something like that. A small, sad smile plucked at her lips as the firelight flickered across her face. It's complicated. Doesn't seem fair. Naruto grumbled back without thinking. Blast it. There he went, running his mouth again. He really needed to watch that. I'm something of a special case, Naruto. Amber informed him primly. You know that by now. I'm technically not even a real huntress. Ozpin isn't keen on letting me out of beacon these days. You were out in the open when I found you. Naruto found himself all too happy to poke a hole in her argument. Alone, glowing eyes found his in the faint light. And we both know how that went, don't we? Yeah. He pointedly looked at her. I seem to remember us winning. Her mouth worked soundlessly for a moment, before a soft, secretive smile formed there. We did, didn't we? Just like that. The ice between them broke and the fall maiden scooted closer to him. Despite his best efforts, Naruto couldn't bring himself to move. She didn't attack him like Winter had, she simply laid her head on his shoulder and sighed. He felt a world's worth of tension flee with that single breath. Without thinking he'd been doing a lot of that lately, he tilted his head against hers. Amber stiffened, but didn't try to escape it. There was nothing romantic about such a gesture, he told himself, just two tired souls taking comfort in one another. It felt nice. Speaking of being alone, this really is my room. The fall maiden whined suddenly, retreating to their earlier argument in the face of his stoic silence. I know there's another bed here and all, but that's just because I never bothered to get rid of it. Why would Oz tell you to go here unless Oh dear. That bastard. Innocence burned away into anger, as golden flames licked at the edge of her eyes. He said that I knew? At his nod, her expression turned thunderous all over again. I'm going to gut him tomorrow. Get in line. Kurama buelled in. I called dibs. Thank you, by the way. Amber continued. For what? Both boy and Biju frowned. For agreeing to be my partner. Her cheeks shone with a hint of pink. It's nice to meet someone else who genuinely wants to help people. Nothing wrong with that. Naruto shrugged slightly. Ozpin's not going to let me do it anymore, though. She scooted a what and exhaled in a petulant pout. Not after this. He says it's too dangerous to go alone. Well, I'm here, right? Amber perked back up, a small spark coming back to her eyes. You are, aren't you? He can't refuse me if I have a partner now. Can he? It hurt to see that kind of hope, as if she'd thrown all her dreams behind his continued presence. She just wanted to be normal. What was wrong with that? Nothing. In his eyes, a maiden was no better than a Jinchuriki. If anything, it was worse. At least he had Kurama to chat with at the end of the day. But Amber? She was alone. Ah, you do care. By the way, Winter's been hunting for you. Amber's voice plucked him out of his thoughts with brutal dispatch. I saw her lurking by the main door earlier. Her full lips quirked into a frown. She looked fit to spit. I'd be careful, were I you. Irk. She'd already found him and Amber didn't even realize what had transpired outside. Honestly, were the people of Bale deaf or something? Amber didn't even seem remotely aware of his earlier outburst, though the noise might well have muted by her shower. He didn't even want to think of what might be happening back in the city proper. Once more he resolved not to mention Winter until he'd dealt with her. Only bad endings awaited him if went that route. I mean what I said earlier, you know. An elbow brushed his ribs. Thank you? For saving me. Naruto blinked. You have nothing to thank me for. Anyone would have done. No! Something in her voice made him flinch, not at the word, but the harsh rasp of anger it carried. No, Amber continued with a watery smile, they wouldn't have, and for that, well, I don't know what else to say but thank you. She hastily scrubbed at her eyes with the back of her hand and sobbed, actually sobbed, to his great dismay as he looked on. Those people, that woman, they would have killed me if not for you, or put me into a coma at the very least. She shivered and clutched at her shoulders, looking truly miserable. To never realized just how much danger I was in. So, warm lips pressed against the whiskered cheek, warm, quick, soft, and yielding. Kurama absolutely hooted. Ha! Naruto choked and sucked in a sharp breath through his teeth as his hormones howled back to life with a bloody vengeance. He ruthlessly stamped down on them again and again, over and over, until they fell silent. Only when he'd mastered himself did he dare to look Amber in the eye. She'd not moved, of course, but she did wince now when his eyes found hers. I may be inexperienced, Amber squirmed under his disbelieving gaze, but I'll do my best as your partner. I swear on all the maidens who came before me. Her left hand tangled with his but made no effort to pull nor to push him away. So don't disappear like that on me again, okay? She looked so small and tiny in that moment, he couldn't help himself. Sympathy briefly smothered desire, as he gazed down at her trembling frame. She was meant to be dead, but for his bumbling she would have been. He wasn't sure how he knew this, only that he did. And so he moved. Strong arms closed around her quivering body and hauled the fall maiden into his chest as his head came to rest over her shoulder. Despite all she'd said and done, Amber was a trained warrior. She didn't react well to any sudden movements. She stiffened the moment he moved against, palms catching against his torn shirt, though she made no effort to push herself away. A torrent of agitated gibbering swelled in his ears. Naruto, I won't let anything happen to you. He hissed into her shirt, suddenly feeling all too protective of this small life held here in his arms. I swear it. Believe me. Amber blew out a small, trembling breath. Why, you don't need to go that far, then we'll look after each other. He countered, smiling against her shoulder. You look out for me and I'll look out for you. We watch each other's backs. Sound fair? He wasn't expecting the watery whimper that followed. Why? I never asked you that, but why, was it now? Naruto pulled back, still holding onto her shoulders, not quite catching her meaning. Why what? Why me? She slapped at his chest weakly, tears gathering in her eyes. Look at me. She flung out her arms at her sides as though she expected him to flinch away from her. You've seen what I can do. I'm a mess. I can't control my powers. I destroy everything I touch. I'm loud. Pushy. Stubborn. We barely know each other. A small, tiny hiccup fled from her lips and she buckled in the face of the sigh that followed. No. She stabbed a finger against his nose when he tried to speak. Don't deflect. Don't give me that look. You swooped in and saved me without a second thought. Soe. Why are you being so nice to me? Naruto drew further back, considering his response. How odd. Her words didn't anger him. If anything, they made Naruto feel bad for Amber. Here she was bearing her soul to him, and he couldn't help but smile. Because I want to? Because you're like me? Because you're my friend? He tilted his head, the true meaning of her words bouncing right off his skull. Meanwhile each sentence of his own hammered home like a nail in her heart. So what if you're loud and stubborn? So what if you break stuff? I've done all of those things and more. I like that about you, you know. A faint blast of heat burst from Amber's body as her face turned scarlet. This time, he couldn't make sense of the gibberish that fled her mouth. Kurama crashed backward in the seal with a groan. He's done it again, ladies and gentlemen. Absolute dolt. I'm washing my paws of this madness. Wake me when it's morning. Eh? Did what? What did I do? Amber answered for him. She melted back into his arms and all but welded herself against his chest this time. Warm hair tickled his chin as she tucked her head into the nook of his shoulder. Slowly, falteringly, her arms encircled his back. In that moment she held him as much as he held her. A moment passed. Then another. Yet another still. I'll hold you to that, she whispered. And I'm sorry. I'm still a mess from all this. Hey, it's fine. Naruto awkwardly patted her back, suddenly aware of just how close she was. You're alive. That's what counts, right? I'm alive. Amber murmured the words into his chest, chanting them like a mantra as her panic began to ebb. Right. Alive. Alive. I'm alive. She dared to peek up at him, eyes shining. I'm alive thanks to you, and that. With those words, he finally dared to release her entirely. Her hand followed him, fingers clinging onto his sleeve. Wait. Cast into the flickering light of a dying candle, the fall maiden regarded him for a long moment through half-lidded eyes, an unreadable expression on her face. She looked like was gathering herself for some great effort, marshalling the dying embers of her resolve. He was right. At length she smacked her lips, slapped both her cheeks and took a deep breath for courage. I was wondering, she began softly hanging her head. This weekend, Her head snapped up. Would you like to go into the city? The door crashed open, swallowing his response as someone snapped on the lights. Both teens flinched, squinting against the unexpected illumination. Hey, what gives? Aha! A familiar voice sang. Found ya! Naruto recovered first, his eyes narrowing against the glare. He spied dark hair and an all-too-familiar grin of the shit-eating variety. His nose wrinkled as the harsh stench of alcohol assaulted his senses. Under any other circumstances, he would have snarled and shouted condemnations. Now, he was just so unbelievably done with everything and found himself too tired to care. Much less when he saw the flask in the man's hand. Crow? He frowned. Why did you kick the door down, Uncle Crow? Amber whined, still hiding her eyes. What? Sure enough, the old bird peered blearily at the two of them, flask in hand. Then he wrinkled his nose at him. Huh? What are you doing here, kid? Weren't you with the Ice Queen? Naruto knew what was about to transpire. Call it precognition, a sixth sense, or simply common sense, or what have you. He tried to prevent it. He really, truly did. Even as Crow Branwen opened his mouth to continue, a golden hand appeared over his mouth, and the rest of the blonde soon followed. That should have been enough to silence the surly drunk. It was not. Because said drunk bit him hard. The blonde recoiled with a yelp. Oh. What was that for? You're dating the Ice Queen, he accused, thrusting a finger in his face. I should be asking you the same thing. Traitor, how does that make me a traitor? Naruto howled, flailing his limbs. I just tried to knock some sense into you. Yeah, well you knocked too hard. Crow squawked back. We are not having this conversation. Amber hauled herself out of bed behind them. What are you two talking about? It's nothing important. Ice Queen picked a fight and got her ass kicked by OL Whiskers here. The old bird waved a dismissive hand at the shout that followed, then she kissed him. Tongue and everything. Realization dawned in his red eyes not a moment later as the unlikely pair went still. Shit. Did I say that out loud? Don't freak out, Firefly. Firefly? Naruto couldn't help but snicker. Cute nickname. Amber turned scarlet again. Forget that name. She hefted a pillow. Right now, despite her anger, he could see the tips of her ears burning hot pink. Forget it? This? Nah, not like she gave him much chance to refuse before she hauled him and demanded a date. Heedless of his amusement, Crow raised his flask and drank deep from it, as though he were watching a man walk to his doom. Poor bastard. May the gods have mercy on your soul. Leaving a lot out there, Crow, Naruto wondered if he should strangle the man or hug him. Crow had left quite a bit out there. Was the man actually trying to help him? Why? Did his dislike of Winter truly run so deep that he tried to sabotage her? Bah, of course it did. Those two had been glaring bloody red daggers at one another. He would have to ponder that sometime, but not here. Not when Amber was looking at him like that. She still hadn't moved from his side, but the faint scent of smoldering wallpaper as she leaned against the wall told him all he needed to know about her opinion. Is this true? They say honesty is the best policy. Honesty was going to get Naruto a furious fireball to the face. Rather than embellish further, he offered a shrug. Yes? He ventured helplessly. Is that so? She smiled. It had far too many teeth. Well, we can't have that now, can we? Oh. He knew that look. It was the same look Tsunade wore when she was trying to get out of paperwork. Amber was less subtle about it. She did not sulk. She seethed. The wall beneath her hand was no longer warm to the touch beneath her fingers. It was a frozen hunks of ice, cold and glacial. Well, my work here is done. Crow, seeing his opportunity, decided to intervene. Just wanted to check up on you kids. Still he squinted at Naruto. So you're really taking the Ice Queen on a date? Naruto pitched forward onto his new bed with a groan. It was a nice bed, all things considered. Soft. Fluffy. It did nothing to alleviate the raging migraine he felt coming on. Was it too late to knock himself? Maybe if he hit the wall hard enough he'd be spared this mess. Alas, his head had failed and he found himself forced to bear with their confusion. What was I supposed to do? He groaned. She ran right over me. You trying arguing with someone like that? He expected an argument, not the bleary grin that followed. If she's an Ice Queen, doesn't that make you the king of snark? Amber absolutely hissed. Go home, Crow. Naruto moaned into an arm. You're drunk. The drunken huntsman laughed. He snark king. That does it. Amber's pillow was a mighty arrow loose from a bough, one crow nimbly caught in his free hand without so much as a backward glance. Not so the second. No, the second struck his smug visage like a falling star. Crow didn't just tumble backwards, he flew back out the door with a squawk, flask tumbling from his fingers as he crashed down the hall and through a wall. An angry fall maiden snatched up said flask and hurled it after him. Judging by the sullen clunk that followed, she'd found her target. He gonna be alright? Naruto peered over her shoulder at the decidedly huntsman-shaped hole down the way. And another. Followed by another. She knocked him right out of the dorms. With a pillow. Right, another reason not to get on her bad side. He's got aura. He'll live. She growled. Something in Amber's eyes told him he wouldn't if he pressed the subject. She wouldn't look at him as she got ready for bed. You're angry, aren't you? Still, he had to ask. To not do so would be worse. Amber didn't move. She blurred. Why whatever gave you that idea? She finally turned to face him, and he glimpsed a hint of what might have been hurt in her eyes before she drowned it under an ocean of rage. Whyever would I be angry at some two-bit Atlas bitch for swooping in and trying to claim at you? She shook her head and her eyes briefly burned with flames before she mastered herself, hands balling into fists at her sides. No, Naruto. I'm not angry at you. I'm furious with Winter. Why? He asked as much. Why? You're really asking me that? Her smile was the sweetest thing he'd ever seen. It was just a little too wide, a touch too strained. Isn't it obvious? She was forcing it, smiling through the pain. He knew that look all too well. He'd worn it when he was younger. Her eyes gave her away, as did her hands balled at her sides, sparks fisting within. I finally make a friend and she thinks she can just steal. Hey, in hindsight, he wasn't sure what made him hug her again. It was a quick, awkward thing, but it kept her from accidentally unleashing another elemental explosion. Amber turned to a Hellcat in his grasp, but that was fine with him. He expected it this time and dodged back when she swiped at him. Nobody's stealing me, he soothed. I promise. Good. She grumbled crossly. I saw you first so I called dibs. All the dibs. Too late, she seemed to realize she had spoken the words aloud. Her hands flew to her face, muffling her mouth. Eh? Naruto frowned back at her, realization breaking through the dense wall that was his skull. What was that last bit just now? You heard nothing, Amber yelped, darted past him to slap the light switch off again, and dove into her bed. She pointedly kept her back to him. Naruto opened his mouth in vain to ask again, only for the maiden to huff and cocoon herself deeper in the blankets. Her silence didn't sting, only confuse him, and with Kurama soundly asleep, he had no way of realizing what he'd done. The war he'd just started. Ember and Winter had disliked one another before he'd landed in this world, but now? It was like throwing an unstoppable force at an immovable object. Disaster waited. Right, that tore it. Going to bed. Spinning, he turned and flung himself at his own mattress, resolved to ignore all this nonsense. After such a long day, he didn't expect sleep to come easily to him. Certainly not now, not with his blood up. Nevertheless, he tucked his head against the pillow, pulled up the covers, and prayed for sleep to come. Surely that wasn't too much to ask? The gods answered him, and he fell asleep almost immediately. Neo skipped through the streets of Vale. She did not walk, she did not run, and she certainly did not dance into the night. Alright, maybe she did dance. A little. Scratch that. A lot. Neo absolutely waltzed down the street. She radiated smugness from her every pore, not the simple joy of the child she appeared to be curse her height, at a glance, but the grin of a cat who caught a canary and butchered its entire family. That same impish smile wreathed the killer's full lips as she continued to thread through the thinning crowds of panicked, many of whom gave her and her parcel a wide berth. As well they should, many of them were too busy screaming to notice her. Giant golden fox, they'd said. Monster, they'd said. It's attacking beacon, they said. She laughed silently at their plight and continued on her way, secure in the knowledge that their plight didn't affect her in the least. Bah! Bunch of peasants, no skin off her nose if they died. If they drew the grim down on them with all their shrieking and screaming, it was none of her concern. Why should it be? She was a killer, not a huntress. And if she were able to speak, she'd be singing right now, such was her glee. Why, you ask? Because today had been a good day. No! Not just a good day. Today had been a very good day. You see, Neo had made a friend. A very special friend indeed, and said friend had bought her ice cream. Mismatching eyes of half-lidded cream narrowed in thinly veiled delight, as she carried her hard-won hoard home. Secured in light plastic bags, the cartons cradled their contents securely in the cold night, which meant she had no fear of them melting. It also meant she could take her sweet time making her way back to Roman. In other words, it gave her time to gloat about her new acquaintance, and the tentative bond she'd forged. Blondie was alright, in her book. Better than alright after he treated her. She'd considered shanking him on principle when they'd first met when he knocked her down, but something in his eyes had swiftly disabused her of that notion. Those keen orbs, tired as they seemed at the time, were sharp. His was the gaze of a fighter, not like Roman's but different. Sharper. Stronger. He didn't fight so much with his fists as he did his tongue, and not in the good way. He was also something of a chatterbox. That suited Neo just fine. Blondie did enough talking for the both of them. She turned suddenly, considering. A giant golden fox, someone had screamed. She'd seen it herself from a distance before it vanished into the night. Great and massive and towering, looming over Beacon. Hadn't her Blondie, and she very much considered him hers by this point, said something about that? It was just a thought, nothing more than a suspicion, something she had no way of confirming. And yet. She had the feeling it had been him. Moreover, she wanted to see him again. She'd seen the look in his eyes before, glimpsed an expression she knew all too well. One Blondie had tried so hard to hide behind a dumb smile, to no avail. He was cracked, fractured. Something deep inside of him was off, not right, not quite there. It was the look of a man who'd had his worldview shattered, and not in a good way. Someone who had lost everything. He was broken. Just like her. Heh. Just the thought of it drew another soundless giggle from her lips as she sauntered home. You see, Neo liked broken things. She'd be sure to tell Roman Ale about this. Tap. Morning came with fitful slowness. Tap. Tap. Naruto cracked open sleep-gummed eyes with a long-suffering groan, glowered bloody red daggers at the morning light spilling through the window and rolled right over. His hands flailed for the blankets, and yanked the lot of them over his head. Mornings were evil. Judging by Kurama's groan, the old fox felt much the same. Still, they'd slept surprisingly well, all things considered. No dreams, no specters, no ghastly premonitions. Just sweet, dreamless slumber. Slumber that had been interrupted by that noise just now. Maybe he'd just go back to sleep. Tap. 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 All right. What the devil was that? Rarg. With a frustrated sigh, the blonde shucked his covers and dragged himself out of bed. Bare feet settled against warm carpetry and sprang upright in the same instant, whiskered cheeks pinching in a scowl. Still the incessant sound of someone or something tapping against glass demanded his attention. He cast about the room, searching for the source of the sound. It wasn't Amber. He spied her across the room, sound asleep in her bed, her face serene in slumber. She turned over at some point during the night, one hand fisted before her face. Huh. Cute. He found the perpetrator lurking at the locked window. A lone bird impatiently awaited him on the windowsill beyond, driving its beak against the glass. Naruto could be sure if it was a raven or a crow, only that it was a dark feathered fowl, one determined to get inside. As he looked, the strange little avian fluffed its feathers and shot a nasty caw at him. Then it pecked the window once more. Once. Twice. Thrice. Was it possible for a bird to look annoyed? This one certainly did. It was acting far too human to be an ordinary animal. Which left one answer. Crow? The bird pecked again. Come on, man, it's early, what do you want? Without thinking, he opened the latch and the window with it. Mistakes were made. No sooner had done so than the feathered fiend launched itself at him. For crying out loud! Bugger off! Naruto flailed an arm at the bird as it struck at his face. Seriously? Shoo! I don't have time for you. Why are you attacking me? With a rousing rustle of feathers the bird vanished, and a dark-haired woman clad stood before him in all her glory, scarlet eyes mere inches from his. Naruto blinked and Kurama hissed in the same breath. When the woman reached for the blade at her side, they were of one mind on the matter. Naruto backpedaled. Unfortunately, in his half-awoken haste he grossly misjudged the distance, and ended up cracking the back his head against the wall. He recoiled with an annoyed hiss, clutching at his aching skull. Lovely. Kurama yawned. Another one. What the hell did I miss while I was asleep? You're not Crow. Definitely not. Foot? Meeteth thine mouth. Nice job, Naruto. Red eyes glowered at him. Narrowed. Naruto Uzumaki. We need to talk. Let's nod and say we did, eh? He yawned. This isn't a good time. A foreign emotion gleamed in those red orbs. Is that so? Naruto took the moment for what it was, a chance to size up the intruder and get a better read on her intentions. Clad entirely in red and black, she wore light armor that rather reminded him of someone he'd rather forget, and by the log, she looked like she knew how to use that sword of hers. Though she had yet to raise it against him. Oddly enough, he didn't sense any negativity directed at him, at any rate. Look, he began slowly, raising an arm. Her sword rose with it, tracking the movement as he spoke. I don't know who you are or what you want, but can this wait until after breakfast? Please? What's wrong? Perhaps sensing his thoughts, the woman arched a black brow. You weren't afraid to knock my little brother around yesterday. Afraid to test your luck? Ha! The blonde guffawed openly. Crow has a sister? Wait. He jabbed a finger at her. You're his sister? How did you put up with him? She scoffed. He's something of an acquired taste. Just as quickly, her eyes narrowed. And you're stalling. He couldn't help but grin. Got it in one. Hernwaho's there? Naruto turned, narrowly catching a glimpse of a bleary ember in his peripherals as the stranger advanced on him. Even now his partner was fighting her way out of her bed, albeit slowly, one arm outstretched, bright eyes already burning with the telltale flames that heralded an onrushing surge of her maiden powers. The stranger saw them and paused. Just for a moment. So the fall maiden lives, she remarked. Fascinating. But I didn't come here for you, girl. What are you doing? Ember's eyes went wide. Get away from him. A portal opened behind Naruto's back. I don't think so. Naturally, the blonde stepped away from the damn thing. He wanted nothing to do with random portals appearing out of nowhere. Least of all a woman capable of creating them. There was something in her demeanor that instantly set him on edge. Or perhaps it was her eyes. They were cold. Dangerously so. These were the eyes of a killer, a woman who wouldn't hesitate to take a life. She knew it. He knew. Perhaps Amber did too, because she shrank back at the ice in that frigid gaze. Kurama sneered. Lovely woman, do you really think I'm going to get in that thing? Naruto frowned. No, the woman shrugged. If you're half as good as I think you are, you won't. In that same moment she stepped to Amber and flicked her blade beneath the fall maiden's exposed neck. But you will if you want your little friend here to see the next sunrise. She purred the words. In the portal with you. Now. I won't ask again. Naruto made a split-second decision. Rather than attack, he chose the lesser of two evils and lowered his arms. He could attack and risk Amber's life or give this madwoman what she wanted. Ego demanded he blitz this crazy woman and beat the tar out of her. And yet he hesitated. What if he wasn't fast enough? It would take little more than a twitch to open her throat. He was fast, almost absurdly saw, but could he risk it? Yes. Would he risk it? No, he couldn't bear the thought of having her blood on his hands. Amber saw the moment he made his decision and tried to shake her head, to no avail. If I go with you, you won't hurt her? The words escaped him in a growl. As I said, she's not the one I'm interested in. The swordswoman shot back. You are. Don't test me. He lowered his arms. Seizing the moment, the intruder spun and kicked him through the portal. Against his better judgment, Naruto let her, and everything blurred. What if Godlike Kyuubi Naruto and Ruby? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.